We are going to review every single card in this godforsaken set. Modern Horizons 3, ladies and gentlemen. Is it the final Modern Horizons ever? If they do Modern Horizons 4, will people roll their eyes? Yes, not going to keep them from doing it. It's going to be a Roman numeral set. Modern Horizons IV coming summer 2027. We'll see it. Anyway, we're going to review every card in this particular Modern Horizons iteration. And we're going to do it really, really fast, hopefully. 0 out of 5 is where we're going to be rating these cards. More likely 1 out of 5, but maybe some of them are really bad. We'll see. Most of them, though, are really good. So I'm hoping that the average rating is slightly higher than usual. Some will be rating mostly for draft play, but I honestly won't be paying as much attention to limited this time around. And I'll mostly be trying to pay attention to see like how good they are in Commander, Modern, Legacy, and stuff like that. Loadout tonight is Fresh Undies. Got the biggest shirt that I own on to stay comfortable. Rugrats pajamas because they are my most comfortable. Gas station coffee with caramel macchiato creamer. The little packets of it. That's swanky. And I got a little Kool-Aid that is half fruit punch Kool-Aid, half lemonade Kool-Aid. If you've never done it before, you should try it. Let's go, everybody. No glasses. I'm not a fool, not straining my eyes. Opening the folder, and that means that time starts now. Abiding Grace, the first card. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, choose 1, you gain a life, or return a creature card with mana value 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is the interesting part of the card, but it's also, it's not super great. Like, maybe you do something fun with this, but I'm not really feeling more. This is the first card of the night, so what is the baseline score exactly? The baseline score is usually like a 2, 2.25, and that's really what I want to give this. I think it might be interesting in some Commander decks, and it could have something cool to do in Modern if just the right 1-drop comes along. Obviously, there's already pretty playable 1-drops in Modern. This ensures you can keep them on the table, but outside of some weird combo application, I'm really not seeing more than like a 2.25 on a card like this. As much as I'd like to give it a higher score, 1 life a turn, come on. You really got to be breaking the second mode, and I don't know how much you're doing that, especially at a 3-mana upfront investment, right? So we'll move on to Abstruse Appropriation, the 4-mana devoid instant that exiles a non-land permanent, and then you can cast it if you spend some mana, but it's got to be colorless mana. Doesn't have to be, but you can spend colorless mana as though it were mana of any color. Altogether, cool little Commander, removal piece for Orzhov decks, but I don't think it really goes too far out of that. I'm going to also give this a 2.25, even though I do think that some people will be really tempted to play it. Maybe it's slightly higher than that. I can see this being a 2.5, and I think I should probably give it that just for being such a good removal spell. Accursed Marauder is up next, the 2-mana Fleshbag Marauder in this set. This guy's really good, but it's kind of hard to say what you would give a card like that, so I will give this a 2.75. I think I will. I think Fleshbag Marauder is close to a 2.5 by itself, and this is just, you get a 30% discount, 33.3 repeating discount on Marauder, which is already like a somewhat Commander playable card in certain niche applications. So I actually really like this. I like that it has important creature types too. Just altogether pretty cool. But yeah, Marauder doesn't see play in Modern, but again, I'm kind of throwing some Commander rankings in here. And this is probably going to see play in, again, these niche kind of sacrifice decks and just basically every zombie deck too. I think this probably goes in. So I'm going to give it a 2.75. A body like this that's like blinkable, right, bounceable and all that stuff. Just a pretty good edict effect for what it's worth. But Area Auxiliary is up next. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/3 bird soldier with flying. When at ETB, support 2, 1.5 draft card. Ether Revolt, 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for an enchantment with Revolt. This is the thing that whenever you get an energy, it deals that much damage to any target, however much energy you got. But it also has Revolt. If a thing left the battlefield this turn, permanent you control left the battlefield, then whenever a source you control would deal non-combat damage to something, then it deals that much damage plus 2. So, if something leaves the battlefield and you start getting energy, then every energy gets a bolt. So it's actually very, very stupid. And I think this is maybe the payoff for energy decks. In Modern, it might be a step too slow at 4 mana, but again, in Commander decks, this is an excellent payoff for an energy-based Commander pile. And I think there is an energy pile in the Commander set. So that's pretty cool. I really, really like this thing. Just as far as energy payoffs go, it may be one of my favorite of all time. So I'm going to give this a solid 3. And I know that sounds really, really hard, or really, really high, but I think there might be ways to play this even in Modern to this huge advantage. But even outside of Modern, I think, again, on the Commander table, it's probably going to be like the win condition you're most looking for in the energy deck. So pretty high score on that one, even though it's a bit narrow. Ether Spike up next. Another energy thing. This is the energy miscalculate, the energy mana drain if you have enough energy, right? A decent magic card, but pretty normal magic card. Just a 2, even though, if you have like 5 energy, it's super busted. But the later you go into the game, the more you would just be playing normal counterspell, right? So I'm not like super sure how good it is, but it's probably better than the average thing like this, but not that much better, right? So I'm just going to give it a solid 2. Ajani, Nakado Pariah. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 1/2 legendary cat warrior. At ETBs, you get a 2/1 cat warrior creature token. And whenever 1 or more other cats you control die, then you can flip him over into Ajani, Nakado Avenger. This is 3 loyalty. You can +2 Ajani to put a +1/+1 counter on all your cats. You can 0 Ajani to get one of those 2/1 cat warrior creature tokens. And if you control a red permanent other than Ajani, you can have Ajani deal damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. That's a cool 0. And for -4, the ultimate here is each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among non-land things they control. They sacrifice all the other stuff. Cool ultimate, and you can get there relatively easily. This is a very good magic card, I think. This is 2 mana for effectively 3/3 and stats on 2 bodies, which is really good that you get 2 bodies for 2 mana. Just the best, not flash, but like really good version of like a Resolute Reinforcements or something else, There's 2 mana for 2 bodies, and a pretty good total PT on those bodies is just excellent up front by itself. But the fact, this can flip over as early as like your opponent's turn 2, like fairly easily. But, your own turn 3 most of the time, I think, if you're doing things right. This is phenomenal. I think this is a great, great magic card. As far as, I will say this. On turn 2, you play Ajani, you get 2/1 cat. On turn 3, you engineer a way to flip over Ajani, and you 0 him for 2/1 cats. You have a planeswalker and a 2/1 cat, which is not like that much different than you started the turn with, you know what I mean? So, I don't think that this is incredible or anything, but I will say that this is a pretty more than solid magic card that I'm going to scale up to like a 3.5, which is a very, very good score. But I like basically all of these 2 mana walkers in the set. And I think Ajani is like one of the absolute strongest ones. I think it can do stuff in Modern. So I'm going to give this a 3.5. And apparently people are agreeing with me. And yes, this goes very, very, very well with the 1 drop from the set. We will get to that in just a moment. Yeah, we'll get there. TK WizKid, by the way, thank you very much for your 41 months. I appreciate that. Is Hank a mono white character? Peggy? Nah, Peggy's. I like Peggy, by the way, but Hank, I don't think is mono white. I don't think he is. We'll talk about it maybe later. So that's actually a really good question. Ajani Fells the Godsire is, I think Hank is Orzhov. Anyway, that's my take. But Ajani Fells the Godsire is the 5 mana saga in white. Chapter 1 exiles a creature an opponent controls, power 3 or greater. Chapter 2 is create a 2/1 cat warrior creature token, put a vigilance counter on something. Chapter 3 is a creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. This is 5 mana. It's a piece of garbage. 1.5. It does a lot of stuff, and it's probably really good in draft, but it's not good. Amped Raptor is the 2 mana first strike 2/1 dino that enters and you get 2 energy counters. And then you kind of get to like Cascade or Discover into a 2-drop or a 1-drop. It's really good. This card is fantastic, I think. I think this is one of the better uncommons in the entire set. May not be format defining in Modern, but then again, also kind of might be, depending. It's just a very, very strong 2-drop that I don't want you to underestimate. I like this card a lot, and I'm going to give it a 3.5 as well. Yeah. I'm going to give it a 3.5. The card's great. Amphibian Downpour is the... This is the thing that frogifies everything, so long as you can storm enough times. And it is not good. Really putting my like super critical hat on for this one. It requires like too much setup and too much caring about what your opponent's doing. If you're putting together this big storm count, then you probably just want to win the game doing that. So this doesn't do anything against like control decks. It's not actually very good. And I'm going to give it a 1.75. Arcbound Condor is a 4 mana bird. It's a flying guy with modular 3. Whenever another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 till end of turn. That is a great line of text for Commander, by the way. And I wish it were, Pauper playable, but it's not quite. But again, in Commander, just that one line of text is fantastic. Although 4 mana is a bit of an upfront cost, Still think this is a really neat card if your deck is doing the right thing, and you might want access to an effect like this. So I'm going to give this like a 2 1/4 because I think like it's a cool little card. That one line of text is just really neat. Archway of Innovation. This is the fake Tolarian Academy. It's like the safest, babyest Tolarian Academy there could possibly ever print. So with that in mind, I'm going to give this just a 3. I do think it's very good in the right situation, but that situation is a little harder to engineer than it was when like Metal Worker was a card and stuff. Grim Monolith was a card, and Lotus Petal was a card, and I just, there's ways of doing it, but I just think that this is pretty safe, and I kind of hope I'm wrong just for the chaos of it, but no, I think this is fine. Arena of Glory is the red land like this. It enters tapped unless you control the basic land type that it corresponds with. Taps for a red. Exert it and pay a red and tap it to add 2 red. Spend it on a creature spell. The creature gains haste. Neat little, again, probably commander card, but I could see, mono red playing, mono red aggro in Modern, playing a card like this just as like a one of or something like that. So it's always going to come into play untapped. Play a lot of mountains in mono red. So, you know what I mean? So I don't know, probably a pretty decent card with very, very, very little opportunity cost to go into your deck whatsoever, especially in the decks it wants to go in. So I will give this a 3 1/4. Let's say a 3.4. Let's go right in between, right? 3.4 for Arena of Glory. Argent Deus is a very, very weird card. A 2-mana artifact that enters with 2 oil counters on it. Whenever 2 or more creatures attack, it gets an oil counter. You can pay 2, tap it, and remove 2 oils from it to exile a non-land permanent, and its controller draws 2 cards. Card is, again, kind of commandery and won't do anything whatsoever in Modern, so I'm going to give it a 2.5, even though it could be pretty reliable removal at the end of the day, so keep your eye on it, but I don't think so. Arna Kinnarood, Sky Captain, is an Ice Age reference. This is the 5-mana 4/4 Esper sort of legendary flying lifelink ward discard a card thing. And those are all really cool aspects of the card. But the coolest aspect is whenever a modified creature you control attacks, you're going to double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then for each non-token permanent attached to it, create a token that's a copy of the permanent attached to that creature, which will be the most abused line of text on the card in Commander. And it's really cool Commander, but really cool Commanders get like a 2.75 around here, and I think this actually deserves like a 2.5. I think that it's mostly fun looking, but maybe not as fun as you want it to be in practice. A bit bulky, a bit awkward, 5 whole mana. You have to have creatures in play. Those creatures have to have auras on them for it to really juice, and I don't know, it's probably bad. Ashling Flame Dancer is really cool. This is the 4-mana 4/4. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. Magecraft, you copy or cast an instant or sorcery. You get to discard a card, draw a card. Second time it's resolved. You get to deal 2 damage to each opponent and all their guys. And if it's the third time, you add 4 red mana. Just a really, really sweet commander. But probably not, again, much outside of being a commander that's fun to build around. So 4 mana, probably priced out of most competitive, like 1v1 60 card formats. So I'm just going to give this like a 2.5, and that extra quarter of a point mostly comes from cool factor. I really want to give you a 2 3/4, but I can't quite do it. I don't think this is anywhere near competitive, but again, really fun sort of mono red commander. It's awesome. Basking Brood Scale is 2 mana for a 2/2 Eldrazi Lizard with Devoid. You can pay 2 to adapt it for 1, and whenever 1 or more counters are put on it, you may create a 0/1 spawn token that sacks for a colorless, hereafter referred to as a spawn token. This card's bad. It's pretty drafty. It's whatever. It's not super. I guess you can make a bunch of spawn with it, right? I guess there's a way that you can make tons and tons of spawn with this if you have enough +1/+1 counter effects. So, like, maybe Commander, and like if you can do enough +1/+1 counter things, like there's a way, there's an argument for it in Modern, but I don't think so. I think this is mostly a Commander special in extremely niche applications. So I don't know, it's kind of cool. You get ramp for putting counters on it, and some decks, that's what they want to do, just put counters on it. So maybe I'm overlooking this, but I can't really give it more than a 2. Bespoke Battle Wagon is the 4-mana 5/6 vehicle that does everything. Just you can get energy, you can pay energy, you can draw cards, tap stuff. It's fine. I really can't give this more than a 1.75. I really don't. This is probably bad. Birthing Ritual is the fake birthing pod. This card, I'm going to take a stance on this finally. I'm pretty sure this is bad. I'm fairly certain this is not a good Magic card. And I'm just gonna give it a 2.25. And if I'm wrong on it, I'm wrong on it. Sometimes you got to take the L, and I might on this one, but I'm pretty sure, actually, Card is not very good. Blood-Soaked Insight. This is the first MDFC that we've come to. This is the 7-mana Rakdos one that costs 1 less to cast for each life your opponents have lost this turn. An opponent exiles the top 3 of their library till end of your next turn. You may play those cards. If you cast a spell this way, mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. These MDFCs I really was tempted to give a blanket score to, but some are just much, much better than others. If you can get this cooking for 2 mana, then suddenly you're just, it feels like a 2-mana draw 3, but it has to be up top of your opponent's library. If you bolted your opponent, this still costs, what, like 3 to cast? And that's still not bad to draw 3 effectively. So really, really interesting in BFC, but I'm not sure how much application you actually get out of it. This is one of those that has a tapped dual land on the other side of it, just for reference. But I want to give this, and again, a lot of these are probably going to get a score close to this, 2.75. I think this is somewhat playable. Again, very niche applications, but opportunity cost is the name of the game on a card like this, and it's relatively low, but I don't think this is going to see too much play in Modern. So I really should just push this down to like a 2.5, because really a 2.25. This is a 2.25. Just realistically, let's be more realistic about it. Because really, you got to judge how much play it's going to end up seeing, both in Modern and formats like Commander. And I'm not sure it sees that much play in like either one of them. So let's just give it a 2.25 for now. I think it's a cool card. Boggart Trawler is 3 mana for a 3/1. When it ETBs, exile a player's graveyard. Has a swamp on the other side of it. It's not a swamp. It just taps for black, and it can you can spend 3 life, and it comes into play untapped. Hereafter, this will be referred to as an untapped MDFC. This is fine. I feel like the untapped ones are technically slightly better than the dual ones, but I don't know if that's really true. It all depends on what kind of deck you're building and if it really needs these untapped lands. But that said, this is a cool effect. You get a body, and you get to exile someone's yard on one half and then a land on the other. So I just really like stuff like this. I'm going to give this one a slight step up from the last one, go 2.4. Not quite 2.5. Well, let's give it a 2.5. I will give this a 2.5. Bountiful Landscape. I did not put all the landscapes in here. This is representative of all 10 landscapes, basically. But in case you haven't seen landscapes, they all tap for colorless. They come into play untapped. You can tap and sack them to search a library for one of 3 different basic land types, put them into play tapped, and then shuffle. Or you can cycle them for the colors that they can go and get, right? One of each. In this case, we're looking at Teamer for Bountiful Landscape. By the way, it's gorgeous art, but still, this is a really, really tough call on these, because is it better Evolving Wilds usually for the decks you're going to put it in? I think yes, but how many people play Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse? Sometimes in Commander you will see those cards, and I think this is probably just better for the most part than a card like Terramorphic Expanse. And Terramorphic Expanse is a card that I would probably have to give like a 2.25 or 2.5 to. So I'm going to stick, I think, with a 2.5 on Landscape. I think that these are probably pretty good Magic cards. That again, see like some narrow play, mostly in Commander, but again, there might be like lands decks that just want to play a bunch of cycling lands for whatever reason. Brain Surge. This is cool. This is the Brainstorm that draws 4 but costs 3 mana. I like this a good bit, but I can't really give it more than a 2.5. You know what I mean? Like around the same as the last couple of cards we've looked at. I think this might see some sparing play, because instant speed draw 4 for like a reasonable cost is a good line of text, but I think there's probably just better ways to draw cards, in your like modern control deck, but I could be wrong, man. 4 looks is so good, and then you can just fetch land the 2 bad cards in your hand away like you do with the Brainstorm, so but we'll just play Brainstorm, you know what I'm saying? So maybe I'm just like completely off base on this one. But I'm not particularly in love with it, but I kind of want to be wrong. This is also Brain Surge. It's the same card. Breaker of Creation is 8 mana, 6 and 2 colorless for an 8/4 Eldrazi. When you cast it, you gain a life for each colorless permanent you control. It also has hexproof from each color and Annihilator too. As crazy as it is, it's just a draft card. You know what I mean? It's not that great, probably, unless I'm just missing something. So I'll just give this like a 1.75. Breathe Your Last is a neat removal spell. It's pretty clean. 3 mana for an instant. Destroy a creature or planeswalker and gain a life for each of its colors. So if you're in a Lifegain deck in Commander, you probably play this as a removal spell. Neat thing. Just going to give it a 2.25. Bridgeworks Battle is the green untapped MDFC guy here. It's a sorcery. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 till end of turn. Fights a dude you don't control. So Fight Spell MDFC, we actually already had something really similar to this in the last Zendikar set, and it was just kind of fine. Doesn't see much modern play, but still, Fight Spell on a land, it's going to be okay. So let's give it a 2.25. Charitable Levy right here is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. Non-creatures cost 1 more to cast. Whenever a player casts non-creature spell, you put a collection counter on Levy. Then if there are 3 or more counters on it, sack it. If you do, draw a card, search your library for a plains, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle up. Good Magic card, probably. Maybe not even just a commander special. Kind of a Thalia text that also lets you ramp and draw. Those are all just great things to be doing. Kind of reminds me of like a standstill as well, like in a weird way, but not quite. Not sure this is super modern playable, but I'm still going to give this like a 2.75. I think this has some work to do, especially in Commander. Chthonian Nightmare. A lot of people talking about this. This is a not recurring nightmare. It's that one. It's the not recurring nightmare that cares about energy. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. You can pay X and energy, just X energy. Sack a creature, return Nightmare to its owner's hand. Return a creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate as a sorcery. This only costs 2 mana, whereas Recurring Nightmare costs 3 mana. I've already seen a lot of people say there's a lot of setups with this, and I want to trust them, but I'm not like super sure, so I'm just going to give this card a solid 3. I do think that it is workable, and especially with all the good energy stuff, this might be an incredible payoff, like the actual good energy payoff in Modern, so... I think we're in 3-ish territory on this card, and I want to go higher, but it has to convince me first. It's one of those. Collective Resistance is 2 mana for an instant with Escalate Green. Choose 1 or more. Destroy an artifact, destroy target enchantment, or target creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So this costs you a total of, what, like 4 mana for all modes? That's kind of neat. Just kind of a multi-kicker sort of thing, but it's a good, like, again, a clean, well-designed sort of Magic card that uses, the mechanic it's trying to use, like, really well. So just like stuff like this, I'm going to give this a 2.5 because there's a lot of versatility on this. Doesn't look like a 2.5, but I think we're getting there. It's a really good Magic card. Colossal Dreadmask is 6 mana, 4 and 2 green for an artifact. Stop me if you've heard this one. It's an equipment with living weapon. Equipped creature gets +6/+6, has trample, equipped for 5 mana. So they snuck Colossal Dreadmaw into the set. Kudos. I'll give you an extra 1/4 of a point. That's a 2. Conduit Goblin is red and a white for a 2/2 Gobbo Warrior. Enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay an energy. If you do, another creature you control gets +1/+0, gains haste till end of turn. Neat. 2 mana, 2/2 that gives me energy when it comes into play, and it's got its nifty ability. So, I don't know. I actually kind of don't hate this. This is a Reckless Stormseeker that also can just give you value in the form of energy. It's actually worth a second look, but I can't give it more than like a 2.25. I don't know that it's quite there, but it's not bad, Consigned to Memory is the blue instant with just 1 blue mana. Counter a triggered ability or colorless spell, and you can replicate this for 1. Probably good for keeping all the Eldrazi and their like cast triggers at bay in this set, so there is that, but there's plenty of ways to kind of pop this off. Like I've said before, I guess it works a little bit against Storm, so there's that. There's other like ways you can make this work. So just a cool little sideboard card. I'm going to give it a 2.75. Consuming Corruption is neat. This is the sort of corrupt, but it only hits creatures, so it costs 2 mana instead of 6. It also hits Planeswalkers, just no players. So for the luxury of hitting players, Corrupt apparently costs 4 extra mana. It's ridiculous. This is pretty cool. I guess it's more like a Tendrils of Corruption. That only hits players, or only hits creatures and planeswalkers. So it's really more like you get half off a Tendrils of Corruption. This is more like it, but it's a neat card, dude. I've heard people refer to this as Black Lightning Helix. I'm not quite there yet. This is more like Farika's Cure or something like that, or like Soren's Thirst that you can like scale throughout the game. And again, that might be a decent Magic card. If this is like 4 damage and 4 life for just 2 mana at instant speed, then yeah, we're kind of cooking a little bit. So I don't know. This probably goes in Medina deck and any sort of black-white Lifegain decks in Commander 2, and maybe even the odd, modern deck, because there's already modern decks that play like March of Wretched Sorrow. And so if they want to play a card like that, that's a removal spell on Lifegain, then this is one of the better removal spell on Lifegains that I've ever seen. So I'm going to give this like a 2.5 with obvious room to grow. This is really, really sweet. Copy Croak is 4 mana for a 0/0 shapeshifter rogue that you can have enter the battlefield as a copy of any dude on the battlefield, except it has whenever this creature attacks, it connives. So Normal clone casting cost, but this one connives. That's fine. 2, something like that. Corrupted Shapeshifter is 4 mana for a star Eldrazi Shapeshifter with Devoid. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes your choice of a 3/3 with flying, a 2/5 creature with vigilance, or a 0/12 with Defender. Really, really cute, right? It's half of a Phyrexian Dreadnought, or a weird stat line that doesn't really exist, a 2/5 vigilance, or it's a Phantom Monster. Cool card. Literally a Phantom Monster, a 4 mana 3/3 flyer that's blue. But I'm sure someone in chat will come up with a 2/5 vigilance stat line like right now, but it's cute. But I can't really give it more than like a 1.25. It's not actually that good. Crabomination is 6 mana for a 5/5 crab demon with Emerge from Artifact for 5 and 2 black. When it ETBs, target opponent exiles the top card of their library and a card at random from their yard and a card at random from their hand. You may cast a spell from among cards exiled this way without paying its mana costs. I've heard a lot of people say that this is actually a modern affinity playable, and that will have to be shown to my eyeballs and committed to my heart for it to really... For it to, I don't know about that, but if it is, then it's probably a halfway decent card. It's really good card advantage. People are calling this 2 mana Atali, and that's wrong. But we'll see like how wrong it is. If it's even close to right, then this card is busted. This card is crackers. If it is even anywhere near, a 2 mana Atali, but I would not call it that myself. I'm just reporting what I keep hearing people say. And to me, seems silly. But I will give this a 3. I think that this is like abusable enough that it could be a pretty easy 3. And if it's even half as good as people think it is, then people are talking like it's a 4.5, right? So I think 3 is like a safe estimation, but even that is really, really good. So we'll see. It's just a worse Archon of Cruelty. I don't know about that. I mean, that's a wow. I love Lord Bias with the take. That is a great take right there. Cranial Ram is the card everyone is afraid will get banned in Pauper. This is a black and a red for an equipment with Living Weapon. Equipped creature gets +X/+0, where X is the number of artifacts you control. It equips for 2 mana. So you get something to equip it to, right, when it comes into play. That's cool. But it's not cranial plating. And I really want to drive this home. Everyone is really afraid of this card, but the best thing about cranial plating is that you can switch it at instant speed. So you didn't block my one guy. I literally have one more creature than you, so I win the game. That's the problem with cranial plating, is you have 6 guys, I have 7 guys, therefore, mathematically, I win the game, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, like, that's not what this card does at all. But I do think it's a solid card. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I really don't think it's that scary. I really don't. Maybe Pauper. I know Grixis Affinity is already a thing in Pauper, and it's really, really good there, but, like, it's got to convince me. It really does. But in Pauper Affinity, this will be like a 2 mana 7/8, like a lot of the time. So, okay. Cursed Wombat is up next. 2 mana for, the snake. This is just Winding Constrictor, but better, I think. It's just kind of probably even better. This is a green and a black for a 2/3 Nightmare Wombat. You can pay 4 and adapt to. Permanents you control have whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on them. Winding Constrictor, put an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This ability triggers only once each turn. The ability triggering only once each turn is lame. It's a little lame-zo, but at the same time, really, really cool little like extra Winding Constrictor value here, but once each turn does like really help kill this a little bit, but still redundancy is good for certain decks. I'll give this a 2.5-ish, something like that. 2.75. I'll go 2 3/4 on this one. Cyclops Superconductor is 1 and Izzet colors. 3 total mana for a 2/2 Cyclops Wizard with Prowess. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. When it dies, you can pay 3 energy. Look at that, it's convenient. When you do, Superconductor deals damage equal to its power to any target. So, fine little drafty magic card. It might be better in like Pauper than I think, because 3 mana, 3 energy on a body can remove something when it dies. Like, all these are good. Prowess is a good ability, right? So this is slightly decent, but I'm still just going to give this like a 2.25. I'm not like super impressed, even though maybe I should be. Demon Inferior. I like this card. This is 4 mana for a sorcery that costs 1 less to cast for each card you've drawn this turn. So usually it's going to cost 3 at least. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it into their library second from the top, or they can put it on the bottom too. Brainstorm makes this cost 1 mana. Really good. Which really is food for thought. Even stuff like Thirst for Knowledge, this costs 1 mana. A Chart of Course, this costs 1 mana. You know, if you draw 2 cards outside of your draw step, this costs a single mana. And that's great. You know, even like an Opt or a similar card like that draws a single card, we'll put this down to 2 mana, and I think that's like worth it a lot of the time. Just a really, really phenomenal card, I think. Kind of a sneakily good Magic card. I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think it's a very, very good piece of removal. And that's basically sort of the outer limits of a good piece of removal. And I think this is up there, especially considering it's in a color. It doesn't get a whole lot of removal, but I think it's kind of fantastic. I do think it's slyly really, really good. Depth Defiler is probably limited playable only. It's 5 mana for a 3/5 Eldrazi with Devoid and Kicker, a single colorless mana. When you cast the spell, choose 1. If you kicked it, you get both. Return target creature to its owner's hand, or target player draws 2 cards, discards a card. So again, especially if you can get all the value, that costs 7 mana. But if you get all the value, a bounce and then a catalog, really, really good. But too much mana, 1.75. Limited playable card. Detective's Phoenix is up next. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/2 Phoenix with Bestow, a red, and collect evidence 6. Flying, haste. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying and haste. You may cast Detective Phoenix from your graveyard using its Bestow ability. That's really, really neat because if you bestow it, it's going to come down onto a dude, and then if that dude dies, it becomes just a 2/2 flying haste. And then if it dies, it can then bestow again onto a different guy, and then that guy dies, it'll become a Phoenix again, just a really neat like version of a Phoenix, I think. And again, I like the way they use the design space here. Let's make a Phoenix with Bestow, and let's also make Collect Evidence. So he's not going to be coming out like all the time. Ultimately, I don't think this is great. I don't think this is another version of like Arclight or anything like that, but it is a neat Phoenix. But that's about all it is, really, is neat. So I don't super love this card. I will say if you get blown out trying to attach it to something, then you can still get it back later. And the bestow cost mana-wise is really, really, really slim. Very, very cheap. So altogether good Magic card, but not a great Magic card, right? I'm just going to give this a solid 2 and kind of leave it at that. You know what I'm saying. Devourer of Destiny is 7 mana, 5 and 2 colorless for a 6/6 Eldrazi. You may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put one of those cards back on top of your library, exile the rest. When you cast this spell, exile target permanent that is 1 or more colors. Is this card broken? Is this card absolutely busted? Or what? Even if you don't get it in your opening hand, it's still just a better Meteor Golem, isn't it? It's just a Meteor Golem that's probably better, more or less. It's fancy. It's a good Magic card, guys, but Meteor Golem obviously isn't played in everything. It's mostly like Commander playable or whatever. So that's good. And it can't be like blinked or reanimated as much as well as Meteor Golem, because I'm pretty sure Meteor Golem's ETB, if my memory serves. But still a great card. And it's really hard to judge, because I think a lot of the value comes from having this in your opening hand. And then if you do have it in your opening hand, good luck casting it. You have a 7-drop in your opener. Good job. But maybe it's worth playing because like Ugin's Labyrinth is a thing in this set. We'll get there eventually. It's all the way in the U's, but Ugin's Labyrinth is a thing. And I think that it obviously wants good 7-mana cards like this that do something in the early game. And this obviously does. So I'm going to go ahead and give this like a 3 1/4. I think that there's just so much value on the stinking thing that it's worth like some points. You know what I mean? Disciple of Freyalice is the green untapped MDFC. Costs 6 mana on this side, though. For a 3/3, when it ETBs, you can sack a dude. Has to be another guy. If you do, gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. That's actually really neat. If you can draw like 3 or 4 off of this and keep the body, gain some life, I don't know. It's all kind of pretty good, and you get the untapped land on the other side, but I'm not going to give this more than like a 2 1/4. I don't think it's actually like super playable. 6 mana is too much. Disruptor Flute is up now. I might be wrong, but I think I got it. Disruptor Flute is 2 mana for an artifact with flash. When it ETBs, choose a card name. Spells with chosen name cost 3 more to cast. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless, of course, they are mana abilities. Neat little sideboard card right here. That's about all it is, but a very, very neat like sort of safety valve, right? And there's a few of those in this format, and this isn't the best one, but it's a pretty good one. I'm going to give this a 2.75 in that neighborhood. Dog Umbra is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an aura with flash that enchants a creature. As long as another player controls enchanted creature, it can't attack or block. Otherwise, Dog Umbra has Umbra armor. That means if enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all the damage from it, destroy the aura instead. So it's actually pretty cool, considering it has flash. So it just is a protection spell, right? But it's also a flash pacifism, a flashifism. So protection spell for your dudes that also triggers, like enchantment matters, stuff like that. That is also an instant speed passive. I don't know. Like I just keep repeating myself. Like, let's go. That's actually kind of very good. It's actually undeniably okay, but probably not super modern playable. All that said, it definitely has applications. So I'm just like, imagine if we had this in like for Illuminator Virtuoso and Standard, right? But we don't. It'd be so good there, but still. I'm going to go ahead and give this like a 2.5. I think it's a really interesting piece of cardboard, man. Dragon's Rage Channeler is a single red mana for a 1/1 human shaman. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, surveil 1. Neat. Also has Delirium, as long as there are 4 or more card types in your yard. Dragon's Rage Channeler gets +2/+2, has flying and attacks each combat if able for some reason. As long as you've got Delirium, you have a 1 mana 3/3 flyer. And obviously, whenever you cast a burn spell, whenever you cast a burn spell, surveil 1 is at least okay, but that's as much. Is this card even in this set? I don't know why I'm looking at it. This card is not new to this set. I knew that before I even started reading it. This card isn't new. What are you doing, Dev? Why is this card in here? Let's rate it for fun. Dragon Rage Channeler. 2.75. Dreadmobile is in this set. This is in this set. It's brand new. 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 3/3 vehicle with menace. Sack another artifact or creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Dreadmobile. This is a crew 1, by the way. And yes, it's the Shrekmobile. I believe this card was originally previewed in like German, and it was called the Shrekmobile, which is amazing. It's so good. Unless it was called the Shriekmobile, I read it as Shrekmobile. And yeah, chat was trying to tell me that's from an old set. Yes, it is. And it is an all-star red 1-drop. It looks like it. I stand by my rating. 2.75-ish. It's a good score. Dreadmobile, though, is not great. 3 mana, 3/3 menace. Sacrifice an artifact or creature for 1 mana, and you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Cruise for 1. Not good. Just not. Even an Aristocrats deck that want to sack stuff is not super good. Give this a 1.75. Verging on a 2, but not quite. Dream Drinker Vampire is 2 mana for a 2/1 vamp with lifelink. You can pay 2 to adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on this guy, it gains menace till end of turn. Drafty little guy, Child of Night with an upgrade. Mega upgrade, but still not super cool. Art's awesome, by the way, but the art doesn't really help too much when it comes to the score. Art is great, though. One way or the other. 1.5 on this. Dreamtide Whale is a 3 mana 7/5 vanishing 2 whenever a player casts their second spell each turn. Proliferate. That'll help keep it around. Good job, Ron Spears, on the art. It is really, really good. Really, really fantastic. But anyway, I really can't give this more than like a 2. It's probably not actually that good. Dross Claw is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an equipment. With Living Weapon, equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. Equipped for 2. Amazing art. I think the Cousin It art is just... Or no, it's not Cousin It. That's the guy with all the hair. This is Thing. This is the Thing from the Addams Family. The Thing art is really good, but aside from that, 1.25, it's not actually that good. Drowner of Truth is 7 mana, 5 and 2 Simic hybrids for a 7/6 Devoid. When you cast this spell, if you spend colorless to do so, you get 2 of those spawn guys. No word on any other characters from the Spawn universe. Do you get a Violator? I don't think so, but you do get... Sorry. You get 2 spawn guys. It's not actually that good. Kind of a drafty card. You got 7 mana to play in your deck. You're probably going to play cards that are better than this. So I'm just going to give this like a 1.5. But in draft, it's kind of a signposty. I don't think it's signposty, but it is pretty strong for ramp decks. Drownyard Lurker is 7 mana for a 7/7 Eldrazi Trilobite with Vigilance. And it also cycles for 3 mana. And when you cast or cycle the Lurker, you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of neat. Draw a card, get a ramp on a body for 3 mana. Not the worst thing in the world, but obviously not great either. 1.75. Echoes of Eternity is 3 and 3 colorless. You better be able to create colorless mana, kid. For a kindred enchantment for the Eldrazi, if a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. That's so many triggers considering you'll cast, I guess you don't cast copies, right? So if you were to cast something with a cast trigger, you shouldn't be able to copy the cast trigger. I don't know how that works. Probably not, but still. This is a gross card. This is just an absolutely gross card that has a lot of mana value, right? It's 6 mana to get this thing on the table. So I don't know like how modern playable it is, but obviously in like Commander Eldrazi, it's pretty stupid. But I'm just going to give this a 3. Even though it's hard to get on the table, I don't know how modern playable it is. I'll give you all that. But just on sheer power level, once it is on the table, 3 is just fantastic. Just really, that's a good card. Ethereum Terramander here is a triggered ability of a colorless spell. That's a weird one, but it does a lot. Ethereum Terramander is a black mana for a 1/1 artifact creature, Salamander Drake with flying, that can block only creatures with flying. Pay 6 and a black to adapt 4. This ability has affinity for artifacts, basically. Cool card. Is it good enough? It's really the problem with a lot of cards in this set. Is like this is either kind of a modern sleeper and it's like really, really good, or it's just never going to see the light of day. And I think that this is probably ultimately more on the drafty side of things. There's a lot of like 2 mana 5/5s in this set. And I don't know if this is one of the better ones, especially considering it's got more downside. And a lot of the cards that are kind of 2 mana 5/5s in the set have upside. So, altogether, I can't really give this more than like a 2 1/4. I really want to give it way more than that, but again, I think that when you look at the spread of options, there just are better options, even in like the affinity decks that might want something like this. So, we'll see. Eladamri Corvekdal up next. 3 mana for a 3/3 legendary elf warrior. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast spells, creature spells, specifically from the top of your library. You can also pay a green and tap Eladamri to tap 2 untapped creatures you control and reveal a card from your hand or the top card of your library. If you reveal a creature this way, put it onto the field. Activate this only during your turn, not as a sorcery. You can do this during combat or the end of your turn. If your opponent does something, I guess you can respond by doing this. So that's kind of neat. You do it during your upkeep. I don't know, whatever. Like, it's just not sorcery speed, and I like that. They should word cards like that more often. Really, really neat here. I think this mostly goes in the 99 of like elves, but probably not like not in the commander slot. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure how good it actually is in the modern format in full, right? It looks again more like a commander card, but I'm going to give this like a 2.75. I don't think it's quite as good as it looks, but just being able to look at the top card of your library and then cast the creatures from the top of your library has proven to be very good. But, what would I give Augur of Autumn right now? Probably about a 2.75. And this is close to an Augur of Autumn. And I think in some cases worse, but, obviously if you untap with it on the table, it can do some pretty busted stuff if you have other creatures to, tap. So I think you will a lot of the time. So. Great Magic card, I think, in a lot of ways, but I'm not going to like push it too far. I think the 2.75 is a pretty conservative score, but I think it's also like objectively the right score. I don't want to go too crazy on this one. Eldrazi Linebreaker is I always want to call it Linebacker. Eldrazi Linebacker is the Reckless Stormseeker for Eldrazi, and it's fine. It's just a fine Magic card. I don't think it's quite good enough, but it can swing for like 4 mana on turn, or 4 damage on turn 3, like really easily. So sure, it can swing for more than that, right? It can swing for 5 or 6 on turn 3 pretty easily if you played a couple of Eldrazi up to them. So, also like the trample. Just good things about it. They pushed it, but even though I think it's playable, I don't think it's like amazing. So I'm just going to give this like a 2.75 as well, which is actually a 1/4 point higher than I want to give it. Eldrazi Ravager is 6 mana, 5 and a colorless for a 6/6 Eldrazi with Annihilator 1. It cycles for 2 mana as well. You can sacrifice 2 Eldrazi to return this from your graveyard to your hand. Not the battlefield, your hand. That's neat. You can just sacrifice spawn tokens and put this back in your hand and cycle it away. I think that's kind of a neat application of the card. But those are all limited applications, and 1.75. It's not that great. Eldrazi Repurposer is 3 mana for a 3/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. When you cast it and when it dies, you get one of those spawn tokens. This card's kind of slick, man. This card is kind of slick. I'm going to give this a solid 2.5. I think there's actually applications for this. 3 mana, 3/3, not like great stats, but not embarrassing stats either. And then it effectively gives you 2 ramps for 3 mana. And you can use them as bodies or chump blockers if you'd rather do that. Just a good spell. Electrozoa is 3 mana for a 3/1 jellyfish with flash and flying. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, tap this thing unless you pay an energy. For some reason, you have to tap it unless you pay an energy. I do not understand why. But the flash is interesting, right? I think the best way to play this is effectively as a removal spell. You know, flash it in during your opponent's attack step, trade with one of their guys, and it leaves behind 2 energy. That's not bad, but it's limited okay. So I'm just going to give this like a 2. Well, I'll give this a 2. Emissary of Soulfire is 3 mana, 1 a white and a blue for a 1/4, and when it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. You can pay 2 of those energy to put an exalted counter on a creature you control at sorcery speed. For some reason. I don't know why, but still. This is kind of okay, but just okay. Again, it's limited okay, so I'm going to downgrade this to a 1.75 from our last card. It's just kind of all right. Emperor of Bones is neat, man. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/2 Skeleton Noble. At the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. You can pay 2 mana, 1 and a black for Adapt 2. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor, put a creature card exiled with Emperor of Bones onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. It gains haste. Sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So kind of a shallow grave ability. That's really neat to just have shallow grave on a body here. On turn 3, you can just pay the mana to adapt it. Hopefully you have another way of like discarding a guy by then, you know what I mean? But still, you'll be attacking with a 3/3 and hopefully the biggest guy in your graveyard. So this actually, I think, has some light applications in Modern. You'll be attacking with a 4/4 rather. Excuse me, I got that wrong. It's a 4/4. So it adapts for 2. But still, you can probably do a good bit with this. I think there are lines with this in Modern. But if they're good enough, that really remains to be seen, right? But at least does something for you every single turn. It's kind of a graveyard trespasser, like a Lord Skitter kind of ability at the beginning of combat. So all that's good, but I'm not going to give this more than a 3, but I am going to give it a 3. That's not bad. Not bad. Imrakul's Messenger. I like this guy. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Eldrazi Fairy Rogue with Devoid and Flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, get a spawn token. So if I draw cards, I get ramp. Awesome. That's really, really good. I think this actually has like pretty decent like commander applications, and I think it might be like a modern sleeper, but I doubt it. I really doubt this is a modern sleeper, especially in a Bowmasters format. It's got the 1 toughness, so that's hard to say. But I do kind of think this has like narrow commander applications. If you're drawing cards, why not ramp? Why not ramp? Why not put bodies on the table? Sure, it's really cool. Really cool magic card, 2.5. Imrakul, the world anew. Oh, we reached Emmy, everybody. It's 12 mana for a 12/12 legendary Eldrazi. When you cast it, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Flying pro spells and pro permanents that were cast this turn. When Imrakul, the world anew, leaves the battlefield, sack all the dudes that you control. And you can madness for 6 mana, which is probably the way that most people are going to be trying to play this card. 6 colorless, dude? You got 6 colorless specifically laying around? I guess in the right deck, you could easily do that. And there are lines in Modern, even in kind of an oops all colorless build, with a bunch of mana rocks, even maybe mana rocks to tap for colorless and stuff like that, that you can make this work. I've seen the lines. So the theory is there. But I don't know what the rest of the cards in the deck look like, obviously. I just kind of know what some of the lines are. It's kind of tough. This is actually kind of tough. Protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn is a really neat line of text, but it still dies to sweepers and stuff, but that's about all that it actually dies to, more or less. This can be chumped if your opponent just plays a creature, which I think is really neat. They just have to play a 1/1 and they can chump Imrakul, but eventually, you'll run them down with it. I think this is actually a pretty fair version of Imrakul. I've seen a lot of people call it busted, mostly because of the madness. But again, I think that you have to facilitate that through an awful lot of deck building tricks, and then you have to play up to it correctly. But there's plenty of ways to do it, don't get me wrong. So I'm not really doubting the ability to pay 6 for this, but good Lord, you're still paying 6 mana in Modern for this. And woof. I'm not super sure, but I will say this is an all-star ability in Commander. If you can get it out and if it, just put it in your command zone and make everybody sweat and probably play differently for the entire game. But in Modern though, I guess it does have flying, by the way. They can't just chump block it. They have to play a flyer. But in Modern though, is this truly good enough? Yeah, you will be attacking them with all their creatures. Yeah, that's true. That is true. But I'm expecting that by the time you madness this into play, your opponent will have an average. Again, this is an average of 3 creatures. Some might have 4, 5, 6. Some might have less, but your opponent may have 2, 3 creatures when you play this. And that's big. That's pretty big. Really, really big, especially if any of their guys have, haste and are untapped, which is not something that is likely to happen, but still. Obviously, I don't want to spend too long on any one card, but this is one of the big hitters, in the whole set. But I do think again that this Emrakul can defeat 13 squirrels. This Emrakul gets beaten by 13. Actually, it just takes all the squirrels. You know what I mean? But again, I don't want to spend any longer on any one card, but this is obviously a chase thing. But that said, I'm not going to give this more than a 3 1/4, and a lot of that is due to that very first line of text. The rest is all set up, so obviously it's a tough one to get into play. Very tough one to get into play. But you could always just reanimate it. This one does not have an anti-reanimation clause like a lot of Eldrazi used to. You could just reanimate this, and it doesn't give you the cast trigger, obviously, if you reanimate it, but it is a 12/12 flying protection from spells. That's okay. That seems pretty good. So you might just win the game that way too, So I don't know. 3 1/4 is a very, very good score, but I actually expect less from this than I think a lot of people do. Next is Envoy of the Ancestors. This is a lot less exciting. 3 mana for a 2/3 human cleric with Outlast. Remember that ability? Probably not. It's from around the time I started the channel, so it's ancient at this point. A white mana and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on it as a sorcery. Modified creatures you control have lifelink. That's a cool line of text, isn't it? So this joins Abzan Falconer. If you remember that card, you probably don't. It's basically exactly this, but modified creatures you control have flying. It's any creature with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. And they printed a couple of cards like that in the set. And this is kind of the spiritual ancestor, successor to cards like that. And it's a great line. That's actually a really sexy line of text, dude. Modified guys have lifelink. Let's kind of go a little bit. I'm going to give this card a 2 1/4. Actually, all right. Essence Reliquary is 3 mana, 2 and a white for an artifact. We're only in the East. Tap, return another target permanent you control and all auras you control attached to it to their owner's hand. Activate only during your turn. Not great. Why can't I do it at instant speed? I mean, I guess if I go to attack and my opponent does something to my guy, then I can use this. So that it is useful, but 3 mana seems a bit steep, right? I'm just going to give this a 2. 2-ish. You know what I mean? Bit niche. Pinch Hit Hero, thanks for your Prime sub. Hey, man, you followed right before the stream. Now you're subbing. I must be doing okay. Etch Slith. It's a new Slith, everybody. You remember these? Probably weren't playing Magic when we first did Slith. These are 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/1 artifact creature. It's a Slith with Menace. When it deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When you do, you may remove a counter from another target permanent or an opponent. Really kind of a neat card. All Slith get larger when they deal combat damage, and this one has an evasive ability too, so that's kind of neat, but still, this is more of a throwback, callback, whatever, than anything else. Fan service for the old heads like me. I'm going to give this a 1.75. Eviscerator's Insight is also for people like me. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast it, sack an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, flashback 5 mana. This card's sick. Love this card. Probably no modern play on this whatsoever, but it goes in every commander deck I currently own, so I kind of feel like I need to give the card a 2.75, and I almost feel like it deserves that. And this, Corrupted Conviction, Reckoner's Bargain, really, I think is the closest thing you can compare it to. That you can flash back is pretty good. It's a pretty good card. So I'm just going to give it a 2.5, call it a day. Evolution Witness is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/1 Elf Shaman Mutant. You can pay 2 mana to adapt for 2 here. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Witness, return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got to be a permanent. It's not quite Eternal Witness, and it costs a total of 5 mana to build your own Witness. But obviously, there's combos. with this. There's got to be infinite combos where like you play a creature and so all your other guys get +1/+1 counters, or like put a +1/+1 counter on a guy whenever you cast a creature. That puts counter on witness. And with that trigger on the stack, you can sacrifice the guy you just played and then put him back in your hand. And something, right? There's got to be some sort of like Rube Goldberg, Pee Wee Herman breakfast machine loops with this thing. So that has to exist. But it's also an Eternal Witness kind of that works more than once. Like in +1/+1 counter decks, just like I was alluding to a second ago, you can get like 3, 4, 5 things back from your yard, even if you're just playing fairly. So good Magic card, but mostly again in Commander, this becomes okay. And probably very good there. So also notice you can do this anytime. Not only once per turn, not during your turn, whatever. Just anytime this happens. That seems pretty slick right there. So I'm just going to give this a 2.75. I really want to give this a 3. But I think that 3 is when we get into like actual modern playability or implied modern playability. And I don't think it's quite there. So I'm going to give this a 2.9. We'll do that. Expanding Ooze is 3 mana, 1 a green and a black for a 3/3 Ooze. You can pay 2 mana to adapt 1. When it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on a modified creature you control. So the intended use case appears to be play it on turn 3, adapt it on turn 4, attack, get a 5/5. Right. And then every turn after that, 6/6, 7/7, whatever. So cute. I kind of like the art on it. It kind of reminds me of old school Magic art for some reason, but I'm not exactly sure why. Good job, Randy. But one way or the other. This is kind of a crappy card, function-wise. I'm just going to give it a 1.5. Expel the Unworthy is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a sorcery with kicker, 2 and a white. Choose target creature with mana value 3 or less. If the spell was kicked, just choose a creature. Exile the creature, then its controller gains life equal to its mana value. This is the furthest thing from Swords to Plowshares I have ever seen. It's 5 mana at sorcery speed to remove whatever you want. Get out of here. 2 mana, though, is how the spell is most likely would see play in Modern if it was going to see play in Modern, but it won't, so we don't have to worry about it. 1.75. Faithful Watchdog is 2 mana, a green and a white for a 0/0 dog with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters. A Watch Wolf that is also a pup. I have yet to read the flavor text on this card because here's how I'm going to use my time with this one. New rule with Magic cards that have a dog on them. If a Magic card has a dog and also flavor text, do not read the flavor text. It will probably make you sad. This card gets a 1.75. It's not bad. Fanatic of Ronus is up next. This is a great card. 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/4 Snake Druid. You can tap it for a green. Ferocious, tap. Add 4 green mana, activate only if you're ferocious. Eternalize for 4 mana. That's sick, because when you eternalize it, it becomes a 4/4 copy of itself, which means it just taps for 4 green mana, facilitating itself. Absolutely disgusting. You play this on 2, and then you play like a 2 or 3 mana creature with 4 toughness or 4 power on turn 3, and that generates mana. Do you understand what I'm saying? That generates mana back. This guy taps for 4 mana. I saw Aspiring Spike the other day. By the way, go watch Aspiring Spike's coverage of the spoiler season. It's been very, very good. And he's much more knowledgeable than me on the Modern format. Aspiring Spike is great. Sub to his YouTube or his Twitch, all that stuff. He's got really good coverage. But he called this perhaps the best 2 mana dork in the history of Magic the Gathering. And I think that he's probably got it. I think he's onto something there. I'm going to give this card a 3.5. At the end of the day, it's just a mana dork, right? But it's a super, super easy to facilitate mana dork that later on in the game just facilitates itself. It taps for 4. It's 2 mana to tap for 4 mana, guys. Jeez Louise, macaroni and cheese. That's a hell of a Magic card. Hell of a Magic card. So good. Fanged Flames is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery with Devoid that deals 4 damage to a creature or planeswalker. If the planeswalker or creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So a Lava Coil that's colorless, 1.5-ish, 1.75 in that area. Fel the Profane is the mono black untapped MDFC. It costs 4 mana for an instant, destroy a creature or planeswalker. Clean, delicious, actually somewhat modern playable. I think this is in some cases just better than Hagra Mauling, right? Land's going to mostly come into play untapped when you want it to. So I just think this is almost a free slot in certain decks. So I'm going to give this a 3. And I'm 100% serious. Fetid Gargantua is 5 mana, 4 and a black for a 4/4 horror with 3 mana adapt to. Whenever 1 or more counters are put on it, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, lose 2 life. I actually called this a possibly commander playable card today in the final preview video of the season. I actually think this is halfway fine. Just if you can put counters on it, you draw 2 every time. Gross, right? Gross, but still 5 mana is priced out of any real competitive play, and extremely, extremely narrow commander play if you ever even want to do that at all. So I'm just going to give it a 1.75. I think it's cute. Flare of Cultivation is busted. This is 2 mana, 1 and 2 green for a sorcery. You may sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than play the spell's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards. Put one on the battlefield. Tap the other into your hand. Shuffle up. So you can play this on turn 1. Just play any old 1-drop. Any 1-drop that you want, and you can play this. But obviously, you're mostly going to be wanting to play Llanowar Elves and birds and stuff like that on turn 1. So this doesn't actually ramp you that much, because you could have just ramped off your creature. But this is going to be more reliable ramp than your creature most of the time. It gives you another land outside of just your creature, gets you one of your land drops. So a free Kodama's Reach starting on turn 1 of the game is unbelievable. That's so good. This is actually, I think, one of the better fast mana effects in the modern format, which makes it one of the better fast mana effects that we've ever seen in the history. Yeah, Grazer. That's a great call, by the way, in chat there. Who is that? Mike Wood, 425. It reminds me of The Wood. Have you ever seen The Wood? The movie The Wood? That's a thing. Big Mike from The Wood. So I hope that you've seen that movie. If not, you should. But anyway, yeah, Arboreal Grazer, drop a land off Grazer, sack the Grazer to flare, get an extra land. Oh my God, you are cooking, dude. Flames. Like, that's, Gordon Ramsay, but you actually know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. You are cooking, baby. Like, that's, oh my God, Arboreal Grazer is the absolute fire with this. I hadn't even thought about that, but any old green creature on turn 1 really get you going. Again, don't want to spend too long on any one card, but this card is absolutely bonkers. To the point where it's kind of amazing. They printed it 4 1/4 for this bad boy right here. And honestly, it should, I think you could make a case for a higher score than that. Really good card. Flare of Denial is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. You may, why did I stumble? Of course it's blue mana. For an instant, you may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell everybody. So it's not as good as a Pact of Negation. It's not as good as, Force of Will, obviously. The word non-token and the word blue on this, like, really, I think that just, like, it's possible this card started development as sacrifice a creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost, and it was way too good. So I feel like this is pushed down slightly. A non-token blue creature is a little harder than it sounds, but obviously this is really good in, like, Delver decks that play more 1-drops than just Delver. It's fantastic. But despite like the fact that you do have to play real creatures in your deck and you have to find good 1-drops, and it can't just be like Snapcaster Mage in the 2-drop slot. You have to play creatures in your deck. I think especially for tempo decks, right, that do play a fair number of creatures, this is a phenomenal Magic card. I don't think that it is as good as Flare of Cultivation. I think Flare of Cultivation is probably the best one by a fair margin. But that said, I'm still going to give this a 3.75. I think it's up there with the strongest in this entire cycle of cards. So this is a very, very good Magic card. And I don't want to take anything away from it, but I do think non-token blue are pretty hard hits to the playability. But that said, it shouldn't affect the playability too. The card will see play. It's just a little more narrow than it looks at first glance. Flare of Duplication. Flare of Red is up next. 1 and 2 red for an instant. You may sacrifice a non-token red creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This card is also probably bonkers. But I again think that we're kind of going down in quality as we go through the flares here. That said, I want to give this card, actually like a slight step down, a 3.5, which I fear is slightly too high. There might be better ways of copying spells. There very well may be, but I think the advantage for a card like this in red is that you're more likely to have like creatures in your deck. Even if your deck is burn or something, you're still likely to have, gutter snipes and young pyromancers and like stuff like that you can actually sacrifice. Sucks you can't sacrifice the tokens from Pyromancer, but you can sacrifice Pyromancer herself. And that's something. So, and this could also go in like big combo decks that just want to like hit you with something that hits you for 10 and do it twice, And those decks may also have creatures in them. So I don't know. I just think that this is not like too bad to fit into the right kind of decks, but there might just be better ways of copying spells. That said, free is a really good way of copying spells. So just kind of gross, kind of gross. I think it's okay. And I will stick with that 3.5. Flare of Fortitude is 4 mana. 2 and 2 white for an insta. You may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Till end of turn, your life total cannot change, and permanent you control gain hexproof and indestructible. So, nice defensive piece. That's also kind of an offensive piece, a sweeper protection for your aggro deck. Your aggro, your white aggro deck is more likely to have creatures, especially diddly little dudes that you can sacrifice, 1 or 2 drop that you can sacrifice, and actually play this spell. So that's really, really cute. I just think it's more likely to work a couple of these cards in than it would be in some other colors. Again, like the blue one is kind of tough to make work, right? Tougher than other colors. So I like this. Looks kind of sideboardy to me, more sideboardy than some of the other ones. That, the green one is your whole game plan. The red one is part of your whole game plan. Whereas this, is a little bit more reactive. So I'm going to give this one a 3.5 as well. Although I think it's probably closer to like a 3.35 or something like that. But I think 3.5. Let's round it up. And then Flare of Malice, the last one. This is 4 mana, 2 and a black, or 2 black. For an instant, you may sack a non-token black creature instead of paying it. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Free removal spell that always nets their biggest dude. Probably better than Snuff Out. And Snuff Out is the free removal spell du jour. So with that said, this is a modern legal Snuff Out. And it's fantastic. I think this is really good as well. And I will give this... haven't given one a 4 yet, have I? I'll give it the same as I gave the counter spell. A 3.75. Just a free removal spell. It's not targeted, and that kind of sucks. But sometimes their biggest guy will also have hexproof or something. So that'll work out in your favor. We've seen, Soul Shatter, and effects like this see sparing play from time to time. So I like this a good bit. Free, instant speed, get rid of their biggest dude is obviously a ridiculous Magic card. So I'm really tempted to just throw this a 4. Yeah, people in chat are telling me 4, and I really think that it's very, very good. The black one seems the weakest to you, man. Everyone has their opinions. It's really interesting to see where people are on all of these. I think the white one is probably the weakest just in overall scope. It only has one real use. It's probably going to come out of the sideboard. Whereas the black one is a removal spell. The green one is a ramp spell starting on turn 1. The blue one is a counter spell, those are all, there's a lot of use cases on all of those. And just because of that, it's a removal spell. You want to play removal spells in your Magic the Gathering deck, right? So I think, and I know that this one comes down on board presence. And you kind of 2-for-1 yourself more so in a way on this one, because they lose a guy. You lose a guy and a card from your hand. So I understand in those terms, sort of when you look at card advantage theory, why it looks terrible, but this is going to be great a lot of the time. I don't think it's as good as a card like Snuff Out, right? Because Snuff Out doesn't cost you any extra resources, just life. And that's almost always worth it. Because the creature's going to deal more than 4 damage to you, right? If you leave it on the table. So you don't mind paying 4 life for a free removal spell. This is worse than Snuff Out while still being fantastic, right? So 3.75, I'm sticking with it. Foul Strike is... PETA's going to be so mad about this art. It's 2 mana, 1 and a green for an instant. Destroy a creature with flying. Reinforce 2, 2 and a green. So a strictly better plummet. I'll go to 1.75. Frogmere Enforcer. 7 mana for a 4/4 Frogmere with prototype. 3 and a red, and it's a 2/2. It also has affinity for artifacts. So is it a Mere Enforcer or is it a Frogmite? A fun little callback here while actually being pseudo-playable, to be honest. So I'm going to give this card a 2.25. Actually, let's give this card a 2.4. Let's do that. Furnace Hellkite is another 2 mana 5/5 flyer. It's just like the Terramander back there. This is 7 mana for a 5/5 dragon with affinity for artifacts. It also has flying and fire breathing. So I think this is actually a very solid Magic card, up there with the Terramander. I'll give this a 2.5. Galvanic Discharge is one of the best energy cards in the entire set. A single red mana for an instant. Choose a creature or planeswalker. Give yourself 3 energy, and then you can pay any amount of energy. Deal that much damage to the permanent you chose. Absolutely gross. Absolutely gross removal spell. This is very, very good. Instant speed strangle that also hits planeswalkers and you can leave energy behind. Like, ugh, it's nasty. I think this again, just one of the better cards like in the entire set. You can even target one of your own guys and not choose to spend any energy. And it's just 1 mana for 3 energy. It's pretty good in some cases too. So really, really neat card here, guys. Probably very important for energy decks most of the time, I would say. So if energy is going to be a thing, this card's going to be right in the mix. Probably has a 4 of. And I'm going to give this a 2.75. A very good removal spell because it's not just a removal spell. It's also 3 energy or netting some energy. And that's going to matter so much. This is a very, very good spell. Trust me. Genku, Future Shaper. Is this new or not? I'm not sure this is new. It apparently is. 4 mana. It is. It's 4 mana. It's Tamio's husband. We've never seen him. 2, a white, and a blue for a 2/5 legendary Moonfolk Wizard. Whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a creature token with those characteristics. Bullet point 1, 2/2 white fox with vigilance. Bullet point 2, 1/2 blue moonfolk with flying. Bullet point 3, 1/1 black rat with lifelink. You can also pay 5 mana in total to put a +1/+1 counter on each dude you control. I have been told that these are all of Tamio and Genku's kids, right? You got Nashi as the rat. And then apparently they also have a fox and a moonfolk kid. so that's very, very cute flavor. This is a commander, and I will give it a 2. Ghostfire Slice is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an instant with Devoid. It costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a multicolored permanent and deals 4 to any target. So a single mana if they have a multicolored for better than a bolt. You get better than a bolt if they have a multicolored thing, but I don't really think there's a whole lot of multicolored guys or permanents or whatever in Modern. I just don't think there's that many. Also, does this guy look like Kratos from behind? Is this Kratos but from behind? I think it might be. Either way, it's okay. It's a good Magic card, right? So I'm going to give it a 2.5, which is probably a little higher than I want to give it. I think this actually deserves a 2.25. But again, in sideboards, it's unbelievably good. Sideboard is of Burn specifically. Gift of the Viper is a single green card for an instant. Creature gets a +1/+1 counter or reach counter and a death touch counter, and you untap it. So it will kill whatever it's blocking. But that's about it. I actually don't love cards like this. Even in draft, I don't absolutely love cards like this as combat tricks. So I'm just going to give this a 1.25. Glaring Fleshraker is 3 mana, 2 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi Drome. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get a spawn token. And it facilitates itself. I like that it synergizes with itself. Whenever another colorless creature you control enters the battlefield under your control. Redundancy on my part. Then Fleshraker deals a damage to each opponent. So really cool. Basically, whenever you cast a colorless spell, a damage to each opponent. And you get a spawn. Like, come on, dude. It's so good. Like, I don't think it's actually like Modern playable good, but I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But especially just in the Eldrazi like commander decks, or even just like in the colorless matters, you know, the all artifacts like commander decks that play nothing but colorless cards. Like, yeah, dude, this is so good. This is incremental damage and ramp on your 3-drop. Like, let's go, man. I'm gonna give this a 2.5, even though we'll probably never see any real Modern play. I really like this card. Glasswing Grace is the Orzhov dual land MDFC. This is 5 mana for an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying and lifelink. This is meant to call back a card from like Ravnica block that I can't remember the name of right now, but it was amazing in draft. It gave a creature +1/+1 flying lifelink, and it was 3 mana for an aura. And that thing won me like 8 games of draft. But it's so really, really good card. But cool callback. Won't see any play. Even with the, Orzhov tap land on the other side. It's just not very good. 1.5. Glimpse the Impossible. 3 mana, 2 and a red for a sorcery. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. At the beginning of your next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, put them into your graveyard, then create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token for each card put into your yard this way. You know what spawns do. So this costs a lot of mana to draw 3 cards. So I think a lot of the time it's just going to be 3 mana for 3 spawns. But you know what that actually reminds me of? Like Seething Song or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's not Seething Song because you have to wait until the end of your turn or whatever. You know what I mean? But this is ramp 3 for 3 mana. This is ramp 3 for 3 mana on turn 3. And that's good. It's a good Magic card. But what else it is like maybe ramp 1 or 2 and also draw a card, and that's good too. Just there's a pretty good versatility the way the card's written. And oh my God, Justine Jones, like the art, jeez, man, it's good. But either way, I like this. I don't think it's modern playable, but like 3 mana for 3 bodies that also ramp is like better than you think. And yeah, Pauper. This is also Pauper playable. And I think that 3 mana for 3 ramps on bodies in Pauper is like in the conversation, like at the very least. So I'm going to give this card a 2.5, dude. I kept thinking 2.25, but like 2.5, 2.6 even, 2.6 all day. Glyph Elemental is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 enchantment. Creature elemental with bestow for 2 mana. It has a landfall. Whenever a land comes into play under your control, this thing gets a +1/+1 counter. Not the enchanted creature. This guy gets a +1/+1 counter. Enchanted creature, though, gets +1 for each counter on Glyph Elemental. So you see how that works. I like this. If they kill the guy it's attached to, you still get a huge guy. Like theoretically, right? You're turning any creature into a bristly bill. Hot. You know, there's heat in that. So neat, but not really too much to write home about. 2. Just a solid 2. Golden Tail Trainer is 3 mana, 1 a green and a white for a 1/3 Fox Samurai. Aura and equipment spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is this duder's power. Whenever Golden Tail Trainer attacks, other modified creatures you control get +X/+X till end of turn, where X is also this guy's power. So he will make a man out of you, or a fox, I guess, out of you. This is actually like cooler than it looks, but at 3 mana, I think it's likely priced out of modern play, especially considering it's an aura and equipment theme. And you have to be like 1 or 2 mana and fantastic to be like modern playable under that theme. But my goodness, you know, in Commander, this is a pretty sexy little card that does a couple of very, very interesting things, right? Like cost reduction is great. And they could, depending on what he's got attached to him and how big his power is, you know, all your modified creatures don't just get a power boost. They get a PT boost, baby. So like, they could all get, you know, +5/+5 till end of turn, like fairly easily. And that's, if this guy ever attacks, it's disgusting. So I might actually be undervaluing this card in competitive, but I don't think so. But in the right circumstance, this guy could be really, really good, but I'm just going to give him a 2.25. I don't think he's that much better than that, but really good for Commander. Yeah. Gravedigg is very cute. Such a cute reference. 2 mana, 1 on a black. Choose 1 for a sorcery. Target player creates a 2/2 black Zombo, or return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. You can also entwine it for 2 mana, so you can just literally cast Gravedigger if you'd rather do that. You get a 2/2 zombie token and return a creature card. So very cute, but you can also just Gravedigg. My take for this one and how I'm going to use my time for it is that they should do this more often. They should take iconic, like non-legendary creatures and then just turn them into a verb. Just whatever the thing is they do, make a card that is that. And so I like what they've done with this, but I can't give it more than like a 1.5 to be honest. Grim Servant is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/2 zombie warlock with menace. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to your devotion 2 black. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle. You lose 2 life. This is a body with menace, guys. This is a body with menace that tutors for anything, more or less. You know, tutors for most things. Even if it only tutors for its devotion, it's still like kind of fine. You know, even if it only tutors for 1. Okay, you know, I'll go get a Fatal Push or something, and that'll be worth it. This is I just really think this is a good Magic card. I really do. Again, maybe not modern playable, but this is a good body tutor in Commander that also has a relevant creature type in certain Commander decks. All that's pretty good, dude. So I'm going to give this card like a 2.75, and I know that's a pretty high score for something like this, but I'm really tempted to give it a 3, and I will. I'll give this a 2.9. This is a 2.9, baby. So yeah, fetches Soul Ring no matter what. Okay, that's you right. That's actually 100% true. Grist Voracious Larva is up next. This is a green mana for a 1/2 legendary insect with Death Touch. Okay, starting pretty strong. Whenever larva or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you may pay a green mana. If you do, exile Grist, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. And then you get Grist the Plague Swarm. This is 3 loyalty for a legendary Grist Planeswalker. +1, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, mill 2 cards, but a Death Touch counter on the token of a black card was milled this way. So +1, get a 1/1. Most of the time. -2, destroy an artifact or enchantment. -6 for each creature card in your yard. You get a token copy of it, except it's a 1/1 insect. So, pretty nasty guy here. You know, a 1 mana 1/2 Death Touch isn't playable or anything, but it's okay. It's okay, you know. And it's very easy to make a creature enter from your graveyard. Unearth is modern legal. Helping Hand is modern legal. There's a fair number of like modern legal 1-drop reanimation cards. And so like on turn 2, if you can find a way to get Grist in there on 1 or something, then on turn 2, you just like unearth him or Helping Hand him and pay the green mana and flip him over. And you've got a Planeswalker on 3. You can go ahead and get a 1/1. I think that's actually a pretty, or on 2 rather. And so on turn 2, you got a 3 loyalty Planeswalker and a 1/1 insect. Yes, absolutely. You can also on turn 2, like let's say you're on the draw and your opponent starts like getting Amulet Titan down stuff down on turn 2. Then if you can get Grist on turn 2, like having a 1 loyalty Planeswalker and destroy Amulet or whatever, that's all so gross. It's all so good. So I think this card actually is modern playable. I'm gonna give it a 3.25. I think it's kind of tough to facilitate, but like you can facilitate it with powerful cards. You don't have to play bad cards to facilitate it. It's good in a vacuum. It does a lot of good things in the environment. It, you know, it creates value every turn. I think this is fantastic. I really do think this is a fantastic Magic card. And yeah, I'm going to give it a pretty high score. Guardian of the Forgotten is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 4/4 Elephant Warrior with Vigilance. Whenever a modified creature you control dies, manifest the top card of your library. Is actually kind of a sick line of text. I really like all the Commander modified stuff in this set, like a lot, because these are sick lines of text. Like when my guy dies, I get a 2/2. Okay, that's great. You know what I mean? Like I can turn it up if it's another guy. Like all right, it's pretty good. So I don't hate this, but obviously 4 mana is not like the best price in the world for any card that's 4 mana. Isn't great for Modern. Like it can be if you can cast it for free or for a lesser cost, or it's just like the most broken card in the world, right? Like obviously there's a 12 mana card in this set that I think is Modern playable. It's really broken, but like this isn't quite that, but it is a really, really cool line of text. I'll give it a 2. Guide of Souls this is good, man. This is really good. This is a white mana for a 1/2 human cleric. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life and you get an energy counter. Whenever you attack, you may pay 3 energy. When you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter on an attacking creature. It becomes an angel too. That's all great. That's also good. A Soul Warden. Kind of. More of a Soul's Attendant if you really want to be like pedantic about it. A Soul's Attendant with 2 toughness that also just gives you energy. Like the same way it gives you life, it gives you energy. So this card is kind of bananas. Like a little, it doesn't even have to do anything else, but it does. Like it just makes dudes huge and puts flying counters on them for like not actually that much energy investment. I really think this card is like pound cake. This card is Sugarloaf. This card is good, man. And I'm going to score it like higher than I think most people would score it and give this card a 3.25. And I really want to give it higher than that. But I'm not. I was going to say, and so I will. I'm not going to do it this time, but I think a 3.25 is probably higher than most of you expected me to rate this card. I think this card, like the fact that you get an energy whenever you play a creature is, super gross and abusable. So yes, this card is at least a 3.25, and there might be, you know, this facilitates all kind of infinite combos with certain things where now you can get infinite energy and that might matter. So just absolutely good, dude. So good. It's so good. Harbinger of the Seas is probably the most talked about card in the set. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Non-basics are islands. Non-basic lands or islands. 4.5. Is that right? Am I overrating this card, chat? Chat, now it's your chance to let me know if I'm overrating a card. 4.5. Probably at the end of the day, going to be the highest rated card in the set. if I had to guess. No, I got like 4 no's. Like 4 no's in a row, 5 no's. Is there something to do with island walking? Lord of Atlantis or something, I guess? There's some kind of effect like that. I give Flood Moon a 5 out of 5. Yeah, Flood Moon, that's cute. 4.5 for sure we played in Modern. Yeah, this gives like 5 is the max score, but 4.5 is basically the highest score I've ever given a card. And yes, Flood Moon is an incredible name. We will call it that forever. This is a 4.5. 4.75 says Junk Saint. Yeah, like everyone's on the same table with me, same page with me. The card is absolutely maybe one of the most bonkers cards they printed in the last 20 years. It's really, really good. Harrogast, Erupting Nullkite is 9 mana for a 6/6 Eldrazi Dragon. It's legendary. It has Emerge 6 and 2 red. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. It has flying. Each creature spell you cast has Emerge. The Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. What a commander line of text that is, right? Every dude I cast has Emerge? So you're telling me I can sacrifice a guy to Emerge a guy, and then sacrifice that guy to Emerge a guy, and then sacrifice that guy to Emerge a guy. Yeah, you can now, actually. Hoss, how about it? Fun card, but really this slots into the almost certainly nothing but fun category. Could be wrong. Maybe you're doing something stupid, and you're casting a creature with a technically high casting cost on turn 1 or 2, and then you're, emerging this on turn 3, and it's super stupid, and it's amazing, but I don't think it's going to happen, but again, I kind of want to be wrong. All things considered, though, I'm just going to give this a 2.75. That line of text is ridiculous, but it's probably in Commander. What's Emerge? Okay, this one doesn't have reminder text, but I have skipped over Emerge on a couple of cards like Crabomination. Emerge is sacrifice a creature when you cast the spell, or in order to cast this spell. You may instead sacrifice a creature, and then you're going to pay the difference between that creature's mana cost and the Emerge cost. So if I sacrifice a 3-drop for this 8 mana Emerge cost, suddenly I'm only paying 5 mana for the creature, right? So that's much better. If this is a 5 mana creature and I sack my 3-drop, then that's presentable. Almost. Slap a tie on it. You can bring it to dinner. That's okay. It's not bad. Hexgold Slith is up next, the other Slith in the set. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/1 Slith. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy counters. When it attacks, you may pay those 2 energy counters. If you do, it gains first strike till end of turn. Lucky man or lady. Whenever Hexgold Slith deals combat damage to a player, guess what? It gets a +1/+1 counter. This thing looks like a merfolk with legs to me. Is that what a Slith is? A merfolk with legs? I'm not sure. But this is just kind of fine and only fine. A 2-drop that gets you 2 energy is something I guess I'll take, but 1.5. Hopeender Coddle is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Eldrazi Snake with Devoid. It has flash and flying, and when you cast it, counter a spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1. I like that. By the way, I didn't mention this when I was kind of going off about how much I like this card during the preview video. I didn't mention that I like that this is a cast trigger. This does not have to enter the battlefield. This is just on the stack. You at least get this. I think this spell is pretty good. I think this can counter things all the way up until like turn 4 or 5 in Modern fairly easily, especially in a format where people are trying to like double and triple spell or whatever. I actually think this is like borderline playable. So I'm going to give this like a 2.75, and I'm like 100% serious. I think this is very, very close to playable. It's not Spell Queller or anything, but yeah, Eldrazi Tithe, like on a flying body, like there's more to this than it looks like. I think it's like borderline playable, and it's probably on the outer side of the fence in terms of playability. I don't think that it's quite there, but this is better than it looks, man. Like we do the mono blue cube, this card's going in. Horrid Shadow Spinner's up next. 3 mana, 1 a blue and a black for a 2/3 horror with lifelink. Whenever it attacks, you may draw cards equal to its power. If you do, discard that many cards. Okay, so yeah, it's okay, I guess. Again, in draft only, 1.75. Horrific Assault. More awesome Justine Jones art. This looks like, the art on the front cover of a pulp magazine from like the mid-30s. It's awesome. It's a single green mana for a sorcery. A creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a creature or planeswalker you don't control. So a prey upon thing. But if you have an Eldrazi, you gain 3 life. That's interesting gravy, but not that great. It's more or less just prey upon most of the time. So I'm going to give this, I don't know. It's not like every Eldrazi is like 7 mana, right? Like you can have a spawn token and gain 3 life. But if all you have is a spawn token, this card's terrible. But either way, I don't know. What would I give Prey Upon? 2? Let's give it a 2. Hydra Trainer is 2 mana for a 1/1 human warrior. May exert Trainer as it attacks. When you do, target creature gets +X until end of turn. X is the number of counters on permanents you control. You can pay 3 mana to adapt 2 here. Really, really neat line of text. A super neat line of text that can give a creature like +13 or some ungodly number, but I still don't think it's that great. I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Hydroelectric Specimen is 3 mana for a 1/4 weird with flash. When it ETBs, you can change the target of an instant or sorcery with a single target to Specimen. This is also, though, an untapped blue land on the other side. This is very good. 3.25. I think this is a 3.25. It might be a little bit more narrow than I'm giving it credit for, but I really think this is like one of the better MDFCs in the set, which is really saying something. A set with like 30 MDFCs. This is very, very good. Very, very good. Idol of False Gods is 2 mana for a kindred artifact for the Eldrazi. You can pay 1 and a colorless, tap it to create a 0/1 spawn token. Whenever another Eldrazi you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on False Gods. As long as False Gods has 8 or more counters on it, it is a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types, and has Annihilator too. Really, really cute thing right here, but 8 counters is an awful lot. It's technically a 2 mana 8/8, but it's not really. It takes all the time in the world to get going. Even if you are sacrificing spawn tokens and putting counters on it, still, I don't think it's that good. 1.75, fun uncommon to draft. Imskir Iron Eater looks really good in a retro frame. This is 8 mana, 6 a black and a red for a 5/5 legendary demon, but it has affinity for artifacts. When it enters, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control. You can round down for that, kid. Pay 3 and a red, sacrifice an artifact to have Imskir deal damage equal to the sacrifice artifact's mana value to any target. Okay, let's go. We're talking, man. This is a 2 mana 5/5 as well. Again, there's a few of those in the set. A 2 mana 5/5, ETB, draw like 3. That's disgusting. I really feel like this card is amazing. It doesn't even have to have any other abilities on it, but it does. 2 mana 5/5, draw 3 most of the time, draw more than that other times. And then also just game-ending ability if you have a big enough thing out there. Like, you can fling a Mirror Enforcer at your opponent for 7 mana. And you know how much it costs to play the Mirror Enforcer? Nothing. So, yeah, like maybe just 1 or 2. Yeah, very likely not a 4 of. But Grixis Affinity, dude, we're rocking this thing. We're rocking this thing all day. This is a good Magic card. Solid 3 at least. But I actually think it's better than that. 3.5. This is Squealer. Love you, SBMTG. Thank you, Squealer. I appreciate that. And Solemn Baron, thank you for your follow. Axe Crown Gaming, thanks for your 34 months. You guys are amazing. But I will say 3.5. I'm so serious. I am so serious. 5/5 for 2 mana. It's gonna be 2 mana like every time you cast this. But let's say you don't have enough affinity. Let's just presume that. Let's just presume this is a 3 mana 5/5 that draws you 2 cards when it comes into play. Okay, that's still a busted Magic card, right? Is that not disgusting? So once you get it down to a 2 mana 5/5, draw 3, this card is, yeah, dude, 3.5. Isn't this card just insane? Yeah, chat's onto it too. Chat, Squealer knows what's going on. Isn't this card just insane? Yeah, like I'm really tempted to give this thing a 4. I really am, dude, but I'm not quite there. 3.5 at the very least. This card's dumb. Indebted Spirit is a single white mana for a 1/1 enchantment creature with it's a spirit. Calm down, Deb. This has Bestow for 3 mana. It also has Afterlife 1, so when the permanent's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get a 1/1 flying token. Enchanted creature, if it's bestowed on something, gets +1/+1 and has Afterlife 1. I really like this little guy, but he's not good. But at the same time, I do think it dawned on me earlier while I was doing the preview video for today. This guy was in it. It dawned on me that he really is like the best Doom Traveler of all time, isn't he? Is he not just the best? He's Doom Traveler with like 3 upsides. Like, he is an enchantment, so he procs all the enchantment stuff. You can bestow him. You can't bestow a Doom Traveler, you know. If you bestow him onto a guy, that guy dies, you get this guy. And a 1/1. And when this guy dies, you get another 1/1. That's just so good. This is probably decent in like sack builds too. It's just kind of cute. And I do like him. I'm going to give him a solid like 2, but I can't go too much higher than that. Infernal Captor is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/3 double rogue with exploit. When he exploits a guy, gain control of an artifact or creature till end of turn, untap it, gains haste. So the tree's an effect on a body of the set. And the tree's an effect on a body is pretty good. So I'll just give him a 1.75. Inspired Inventor is 3 mana. It looks like Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows. I think that's his name. Yeah. Anyway, what are we doing today, Gizmo? 3 mana for a 2/2 human artificer. When he enters the battlefield, you choose one. You either get 3 energy counters, or you put a +1/+1 counter on a guy, or you create a servo, a 1/1 colorless artifact creature guy. Sweet card, man. A lot of big spread of options on Laszlo here, but altogether, I don't think he's great. 1.75, something like that. Inventor's Axe. I can't say axe without saying it like Gimli. I guess it's in my contract somewhere. It's a single red mana for an equipment. It's an axe with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters, and you get to attach it to a guy. And the guy you attach it to gets +2/+0, and you equip it by paying 2 energy, which is convenient because it gave you 2 energy, but you didn't even have to use the 2 energy it gave you to attach it to a guy in the first place. Is this card dumb, or am I just stupid? Am I stupid for thinking it's good? You know, is this not just Bone Splitter, but better, just better than Bone Splitter? I know that Bone Splitter, like any deck can play it. And like just being better than Bone Splitter doesn't mean you're really good. But like a single mana, auto equips, free 2 energy for no reason, with flash. Bone Splitter doesn't have flash either. Like, I think this card is kind of nuts. I really do. Pauper Energy. I think in Pauper Energy, there's a real case for this. So if you have no energy, you can't equip it, which kind of sucks, but like, I don't think it matters, dude. I really don't. Yeah, turn 1, 2 energy. Exactly. It's the Attune with Ether principle. You know what I mean? Like, that's so good. You don't even have to have a creature. This is one of the few things, like, you don't have to have anything. To just play it on turn 1. You know, like, there's a removal spell for energy that gives you 2 energy when it comes into play, but like you have to have something to remove. You know what I'm saying? There's 2 of those. This, on the other hand, you don't even have to have the creature if you just want the 2 energy. But I think it's really good. I think this card's really good. And I'm gonna give it a 2.75. I'm like like 100 about that, dude. This card is better than it might look. Invert Polarity is a counter spell. It's 3 mana, 2 blue, and a red for an instant. Choose target spell, then flip a coin. How quirky. If you win the flip, gain control of that spell, and you may choose new targets for it. If you lose the flip, counter the spell. So no matter what, it's cancel. But if you somehow win the flip, you get the spell. Like, just what an is it spell, dude. What an is it counter spell this is. On one level, I really like this. Like a lot, and want to score it super high, but I'm just going to give it a 2.5. I don't think it's going to end up in too much, but it is pretty sweet, dude. It is pretty sweet. It that heralds the end is up next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. Colorless spells you cast that have mana value 7 or greater cost 1 less to cast. 7 drops become 6 drops. Other colorless creatures you control get +1/+1. Bang, dude. We get an Anthem effect for 2 mana, and we get ramp more or less on 1 card. Like, yeah, let's go. I'll take that all day. 2.75. Like, very, very narrow, right? It's like only for Eldrazi for the most part, but like, so? It's awesome. This guy's awesome. That's great. Is It Generatorium is up next. 2 mana, a red and a green. Red and a green? It's happening. Red and a blue for an artifact. Like, we're halfway through and I start to break down, you know? A red and a blue for an artifact. If you would get 1 or more energy, you get that much +1 instead. You can tap it to draw a card. Activate only if you paid or lost 4 or more energy this turn. That's kind of a lot to pay or lose, but this is a 2 mana thing that will draw you a card from time to time, but mostly it's this first line of text. It's like really, really intriguing, right? But that said, I don't know if it's worth skipping a turn to like get your energy going. It doesn't actually give you any energy. So it's kind of a really tough call on a card like this, but I'm just going to give it a solid 2. I really don't think it's worth too much more than that. Jolted Awake, baby. This is a single white mana for a sorcery. This was my card of the day in the preview finale. I think the best card of the common dump by far, and Probably if they're trying to sneak one in that's actually relevant, it's this one. Choose up to one target artifact or creature card in your yard. You get 2 energy. Then you may pay an amount of energy equal to the card's mana value. If you do, return it from your yard to the field. You can also cycle this away for 2. This is unearthed and white, but energy-based. Kind of helping hand with cycling, if you want to put it that way. Great card. I really think this is a phenomenal Magic card that's going to be able to get back a 4 or 5 drop fairly easily most of the time and can even hit artifacts, you know? Like Unearthed and Helping Hand can't do that. It's kind of like a recommission because it can hit artifacts. This is phenomenal. AJ Styles. This is a very good Magic card. I'm going to give this a 3. Maybe even more. Like I think this is possibly a 3.25, like potentially format defining card, but probably not. Probably not. A little bit niche because it's mostly energy. But I will say if it gets a 1-drop back, you can generate energy with it. That might be important. If anything, it cycles. But this is a very solid card. And I want to just put it right at a 3. I think that's correct. Kami of Jealous Thirst. 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/3 spirit with DT. You can also pay 5 mana to have each opponent lose 2 life. You gain 2 life. But this ability costs all 5 less. This ability is free to activate if you've drawn 3 or more cards this turn. But you can only do it once a turn. Especially considering it might be free. They don't want to just say if you've drawn 3 cards, you win the game. Drafty. Mostly a drafty little piece right here. So I'll give it a 1.75 and keep it pushing. I gotta go. See you later, Aeronax. Thanks for hanging around. Kozilek's Unsealing is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment with Devoid. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, you get 2 spawns. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. My God. This doesn't do anything the turn you cast it. But on the next 3 turns, you're going to get a spawn every single turn. If you do it right. If your Eldrazi deck is playing the way you drew it up in the lab there. So that's pretty good. And being able to draw 3, dude, cast your Mog, cast your Kaz, cast any number of faceless 7-drops that we've seen in this set already, and draw Trace, like Ancestral Recall whenever I cast an Eldrazi, like unbeatable. I'm unbeatable right now. So yeah, and it lets you cast the 7-drop on 5. If you're doing it correctly, you know what I mean? Well, you see, you cast it on 3, and then on 4 you get a spawn and play a land. So that's what, 5 mana, 3, 4, 5, and then your land drop will be 6. So it will be tough to get a 7-drop that turn, but I guess it's theoretically possible. Yeah, with Labyrinth you can do it. Yeah, with Labyrinth you can do it. But yeah, I don't know if it's worth like skipping a turn for it, but God, does give you like all the value in the world if you can set up. So really, again, a tough call on this. Is it worth skipping the turn? Basically. And I think the way the Eldrazi decks look like they might be built, yeah, it might be worth skipping that turn. So I don't want to give this any more than like a 2.75. And even then, I think it's kind of pushing it. But I'm going to put it there, 2 3/4. Kozilek's Command is really neat, man. This is X and 2 colorless for a Kindred instant for the Eldrazi. You can choose 2 of these things. Target player creates X spawn tokens. Target player scries X and then draws a card. Exile target creature with mana value X or less, or exile up to X cards from graveyards. So if you exile a creature, it's always going to be like really not a great rate. You know what I mean? If I exile a 3-drop, it's 5 mana. If I exile a 5-drop, it's 7 mana. It's kind of a lot, but I do think that like the ramp mode on this is probably the best mode. And it is instant too, by the way. So like for 4 mana, I get 2 ramps at instant speed and one of these other things. And that's really good. For 3 mana, I can get a spawn at instant speed and draw a card, which I think is good. And obviously these other modes are kind of, you know, I think that the removal mode is really good depending on how late in the game you are, or if your opponent has a premium 1 or 2 drop, and this is modern we're talking about, so that is somewhat likely to happen. And then obviously the graveyard mode is kind of niche, but you will use it in some matchups. And it's instant speed too, so your opponent might go, like put a reanimation effect on the stack or something, and you can play this and just exile the thing they want to target, which I think is very, very good. Instant speed is really a killer on this card, dude. A lot of spread of use. And even though it does require you to have colorless mana out, I don't think it's that big of a deal, man. So I'm going to give this card a shockingly high score of 3.5. I think this is really, really good, guys. Kozilek the Broken Reality is 9 mana. I think his command's probably better than him, all things considered. 9 mana for a 9/9 legendary Eldrazi. When you cast it, up to 2 target players each manifest the 2 cards from their hand. For each card manifested this way, you can draw a card. Other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2. So this is kind of like a like a Titan, or like a Grave Titan or something like that, I guess. However, Grave Titan got you some 2/2s. This gets what? 5/4s? You make 5/4s when you manifest. So what are you putting into play here? 19 total power? Something like that when you do this? And that's just, you know, if you manifest things from your library. You can have your opponent manifest guys, and they just get 2/2s. They don't get 5/4s. Your opponent gets 2/2s, and you could potentially draw 4 cards off of this thing in a 1v1 game. But I would say that if you get this, if you're able to cast this, 19 power, draw 2 cards, pretty game winning. Pretty game winning. So I don't think Kozilek is, I will say though, I don't think Kozilek is great. I think 9 mana is really expensive, you know, like crazy, crazy expensive for something like this that actually doesn't, as much as I've sort of played up the value that it potentially gives you, I think that if you're paying 9 mana, you don't want this kind of like incremental value. Oh, it's got 3 bodies on it. I draw a couple of cards. I'm crushing you in the card advantage race. I think what you actually want is just a card that says you win the game for 9 mana. And this doesn't quite do that, right? So I'm just going to give this a 3.25. I think it's a very playable Magic card, and like people are going to try to play it, but even in these like colorless Eldrazi decks, you only have room for so much like knockout, I win the game because I resolved this Eldrazi, and I'm not sure this is necessarily one that makes the cut, but it is very, very cool. How does Manifest work? Yeah, it's a lot like Morph. When you manifest a card, you just take the top card of your library, and you put it down on the table. It's a 2/2 face down guy. If it's a creature, you can turn it face up for its casting cost, is how Manifest works. Kudo, Ping Among Bears. This is 2 mana, Selesnya colors for a 2/2 legendary bear. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. All creatures. So this is almost a humility, but it's, you know, they're double power from a humility, and they get to keep their abilities. So it's nowhere near humility, Dev. What are you talking about? I don't know. It's just the thing that it reminds me of the most. And I think it's really, really cool, especially in like +1/+1 counter decks where you don't care what base power is. You know what I mean? Base power might actually be lower than 2/2, and this just helps all your dudes while hurting all your opponent's guys. Also, really cute combination with Meek Stone here. If you have a Meek Stone, nothing ever untaps. Actually, if you Meek Stone, everything untaps. And you can put you can make your opponent's creatures big somehow, like larger than 2/2s, and none of them will untap, but all your dudes will untap. I don't know. It's cute. It's cute. But this card is nothing but cute, and I think that that is kind of a problem with it. So unless this is just super busted and I'm not seeing it, because I actually do think it carries that potential, I'm just going to give this a 2.5. Legion Leadership is the Boros MDFC that has, you know, red-white on the other side of it. This is 2 mana. Until end of turn, double target creature's power and it gains first strike is an instant. Neat little combat trick here in some ways. Or if a creature gets through, you know, unblocked, just double its power. That's neat. Works whether a creature's unblocked or gets blocked. So that's cute. It's a cute little combat trick, but mostly for limited. 2.25. Lethal Throwdown is a single black mana for a sorcery, has an additional cost to cast it. Sack a creature or sack a modified creature. Destroy a creature or planeswalker. That's just Bone Splinters. But if the modified creature was sacked, you draw a card. That's actually like a pretty good upgrade on Bone Splinters, I think, in a lot of situations. So pretty good. I'm going to give this a 2.25. It's not bad. Lion Umbra is the Daybreak Coronet callback of the set. 2 green mana for an enchantment. It's an aura that enchants only a modified creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, has vigilance and reach and Umbra armor, meaning that if the creature would die, remove all the damage from it, get rid of Lion Umbra instead. So again, kind of Daybreak Coronet with a protection effect like built into it. This card's pretty good in Enchantress decks, but Enchantress decks aren't like super important, right? So I'm not going to score it too high, but obviously if you care about enchantments, you probably want to play this card if you have legal access to it. So I'm going to give this a 3. I'm serious. This is, no, 2.75. Let's give it a 2.8. Can we give it a 2.8? I think we can. Malevolent Rumble is up next. This is because, you know, it's an aura. Auras are just never going to be like amazing, depending, you know, but most of the time, unless your name is Rancor, you're probably not that good. Malevolent Rumble is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Reveal the top 4 of your library, put a permanent card from among them into your hand, rest to go into your yard, and you get a spawn token. This is underrated, I think. I think this card is really, really good, guys. Alluded to that in today's spoiler video. This came out in the common dump. It is a common too, so it's pauper playable. This is an impulse effect in green that isn't instant speed, but whatever. Impulse effect in green that puts cards into your yard, which is important, and it's ramp on turn 2. So it's not rampant growth, but a turn 2 ramp piece that also kind of impulses is a little bit disgusting. It's a little bit very good. So I kind of think this is very sweet, and I'm going to give it like a 3. Yeah. I had to check myself there. Am I serious? Yes. I will give this card a 3, dude. Probably too high, but I don't care. I honestly, I expect something from this card. Mandibular Kite, I expect nothing from. A single white mana for an equipment with living weapon. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Has flying, equipped for 4. Garbage magic card. 1.25. Marionette Apprentice. My favorite card in the set. 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/2 human artificer with Fabricate 1. That means when it comes into play, it either gets a +1/+1 counter, or you can choose to get a 1/1 servo. You should probably do that most of the time. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. They made this card Bowmaster proof by itself. You don't have to put the counter on it for it to be Bowmaster proof. That's very neat. But yeah. So Blood Artist, kind of. Really more of a Zulaport Cutthroat, because it's only stuff you control. That also works for graveyards. Or not graveyards, also works for artifacts. And it doesn't say non-token anywhere on there, so like every time you sack a treasure, they lose a life. That's really, really good. Sack a food, sack a clue, they lose life. Artifact creatures die, they lose life. Just, Blood Artist. It's just a better, this is just going to be a better Blood Artist in many decks. And if anything, it's redundancy with Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, and those effects. So you know why it's my favorite card in the set. You know why this is my favorite kind of deck. It's the only commander deck I really build is Aristocrats. I have to order like 3 copies of this day 1, so I don't have to switch it back and forth between decks over and over. Just phenomenal magic card. And I cannot be objective on this, so I apologize for the incredibly high score. But especially considering this mimics a classic magic card, and I think mimics it in a way that's not necessarily worse. Blood Artist is whenever a creature dies, and I think that's just always going to be more desirable. But this actually has real power and toughness. It puts a body onto the table, which Blood Artist does not do. I think this might be right up there in terms of power level. So I'm going to give this card a 3.5. I'm serious. I'm tempted to give it a 4. I really am, but I'm not going to do it. I think 3.5 is the outer limits of what I really want to do with this card. But I think it's there too. I really do think it's there. It looks really good in a retro frame too. Just, so good, buddy. It's so good. Metastatic Evangel is up next. Was not expecting a 3.5. I'm giving it to it. Metastatic Evangel is 2 mana. Realistically, that card is probably a 3, but I don't care. Metastatic Evangel is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 3/1 Phyrexian Human Cleric. Whenever another non-token creature you control or enters the battlefield under your control, you get to proliferate. Creature enters, proliferate. That's good, right? That's all right. That's pretty good. I'm going to keep saying it over and over. It is Bowmasterable, which kind of sucks in a format like Modern, and it's not Pauper playable, which kind of sucks too. But altogether, Guy ETB's Proliferate is a great line of text. Yeah, treasures count as going to the grave when you attack them, right? Yes, tokens touch the graveyard, so they would count. Really good. So good. And I saw that somebody said, I think the same person, yeah, Mike Wood, you said it goes well with the new Woe Strider guy. We'll get to him. It does go well with that guy. That guy's great. But Evangel right here, I'm basically done talking about because I've repeated his text box like 8 times. I just think that you can't understate how good that text box seems in a vacuum, right? So I'm just going to give this card like a 2.75. I think it's super close to there, but mostly Commander playable, but probably do gross stuff in that format. Mindless Conscription is, by the way, I just want to say one more thing about this card. I'm sure that they already existed, like endless, infinite proliferate loops, but this guy probably makes endless proliferate loops even more possible than they already were by a wide margin, so good job. Mindless Conscription is 3 mana for an enchantment. It's black. When Conscription enters the battlefield and whenever you draw your third card each turn, amass zombies 3. Not very good. The whenever you draw your third card theme is kind of whack in this set, but I wish it would, award you a little bit more than that for doing this. But still, it's basically a 3 mana 3/3. It's okay in draft. 1.5. Mog Mob is the triple Mog Fanatic guy. that's pretty really all the explanation this guy needs. He's cool and might actually see some play in Modern. He's effectively a lightning bolt on a body. That's great. You can split it. It's actually an arc lightning on a body, which is even better. So I'll give this guy a 3, and I'm serious. Molten Gatekeeper is a really cool commander card. This is the Corpse Knight in red that you can unearth for a single red mana. That guy. I really like this, like so much. I think that just being able to set up killer turns for a single red mana is probably where you want to be. And like in mill decks that get a bunch of little tokens out and stuff like that, this dude's cool. You can mill him into your yard. And then again, just have a big turn, right? And fireball your opponent for the win. And again, just 1 mana to get this in place. I think this card is sneaky good. And maybe more than a role player, maybe a key piece in a sort of combo deck somewhere down the line, or even right this second. So I'm going to give this a 3. And I know that sounds really high, but I love Corpse Knight. And I especially love Corpse Knight that only costs 1 mana and sets up OTKs, which this does really, really nicely. So good card here. Monstrous Vortex is 4 mana, 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a creature spell power 5 or greater, discover X, where X is the spell's mana card or mana value. Really dangerous piece of cardboard right here, baby. This is a good looking thing, but 4 mana is probably too much to get it on the table in the first place for a real competitive environment. But in Commander, I think this is just like evergreen, pardon the pun, in a lot of like green decks, so absolutely nasty. This is fantastic, right? This is good. This is a good card. But again, probably just in Commander. Hopefully I'm wrong. And this is just super busted. But yeah. In Commander, there's going to be turns where you get to discover X like multiple times in a turn. It's just stupid. So I'm going to give this like a 2.75. And it is very close to a 3 just based on Commander playability. Because I think this is like an all-time playable green enchantment for most Commander decks playing forests in them. Maybe that's just me. Monumental Hinge is a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you have a plains. Taps for a white mana. You can pay 4 mana and tap it to look at the top 5 of your library. Reveal a historic card from among them. Put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. 5 mana in total, really, because it's 4 and then tap a land. So technically 5 mana. To use this ability is probably too much. It's probably just too much for Modern playability or even in some cases Commander playability. But again, extremely low opportunity cost. If you do get 1 activation every 3 games, it's probably worth it. I'll give it a 3. Muster the Departed is 3 mana, 2 and a white for an enchantment. When it ETBs, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Morbid, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, populate. Really, really cute thing right here, but that's more or less all that it is. I will say if you have a really big, fat, sweet token in play, then this probably does cool stuff. But it only does so once a turn, even then. So, 1.75. Almost a 2. Close. Nadu Winged Wisdom is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 3/4 legendary bird wizard with flying. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of any spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto the field. Otherwise, it goes into your hand. But this ability triggers only twice each turn, which I think is really, really cute. I like this. I like that maybe my opponent goes to target my thing with a removal spell. Cool. Let's see if I ramp or draw a card. Well, while your removal spell is on the stack, I can target Nadu with, a protection spell. And when I do that, oh, look at that. I get to see if I ramp or draw a card. I actually think this is good. And there are more people than just me saying this is Modern playable. I found out later. After the first preview video, I saw other people saying, like, there's rumblings about Nadu. So I'm glad I'm not super nuts or anything. I think that there is something to this card, almost certainly. Even if it's just, it gets targeted one time by a Doomblade or removal spell or something, and you get to ramp. Pretty good. So I'm going to give this card a 3.25. I think it's in that neighborhood somewhere. Necro Dominance is 3 black mana. Skip your draw step with this legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is just 5. If a card or token would be put into your yard from anywhere, exile it instead. Fake Necropotence, I probably should have just shorthanded it to Fake Necropotence, is actually still a really good Magic card. It's modern playable, which is really dangerous. I think that they, pared this down from the original Necropotence to neuter it a bit, don't get me wrong, but neuter it while still making it like a pretty fair and playable Magic card. So I'll give this a 3.5, and I'll stand by that. I think that this kind of card draw engine is still going to be worth a 3.5 basically every day of the week. Good card right here, guys. Neither Goyf is a single, I love this guy. There's a single black mana for a star plus... a star/1+star Lurgoyf with power equal to the number of card types among yards in your graveyard, or cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. That sounds familiar. It also has escape 2 and a black. Exile any number of other cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types among them. So this is just a better Tarmogoyf. It just is Tarmogoyf, but it costs half the amount of mana Tarmogoyf costs, and also has another ability. Like, yeah, our scale is 0 to 5. This is, I mean, come on. Like, it's 1 mana, dude. This only goes 1 mana. It's literally 50% the cost of Tarmogoyf. But this is all tapered. Tapered. It's not a pair of jeans. This is all tempered by the fact that Tarmogoyf costs 2 mana. Yeah, it's only your graveyard. That is true. It's only your graveyard. Goyf costs, the original Goyf is all the graveyards. You do have to, that's true. But in most ways, I feel like this is a better Tarmogoyf for half the mana that also can come back. God, that's such a good looking card, dude. That is such a good looking Magic card. 3.5, man. I'm throwing it out there. This is probably just like okay. This is probably just okay. But it's still 3.5, dude. You got to show, like, put some respect on its name, Nightshade Dryad. I really like this dude, man. The 2 mana 1/2 Death Touch that taps for any color or colorless. He's got a lot, man. 2.5. 2.5 boosted score, but whatever. Null Drifter is the better Mole Drifter in a 7 mana 4/4 Eldrazi Elemental. When you cast it, draw 2, Flying Annihilator 1, evoke 2 and a blue. Evoke means you can just cast it for 2 and a blue, but as soon as it comes into play, you sacrifice it. is what this does. But again, I think just like a better Mole Drifter in almost every way, and that's good too. I'll give this card a 2.75. I think it's really close to a 3 though. Null Elemental Blast, a colorless mana for an instant. Choose 1. Counter target multicolored spell. Destroy target multicolored permanent. Really sexy sideboard piece right here. Really, really good, It's been a while since we've seen an Elemental Blast, and they are famously extremely powerful, and this is no different. Being a sideboard card only kind of knocks some points off, but still, I have to give this like a 3. This Blasts are incredibly powerful cards when you can actually hit something with them. Nyxborn Hydra is X and a green for a 0/1 enchantment creature Hydra with Bestow X and 2 green. It has reach and trample, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Hydra, and has reach and trample. So you see how it's just like the white one we looked at a while back, in that this gets the counters, right? But the creature gets +1/+1 for each counter. This is actually very, very cool and limited. I think this is really neat. You can make a dude huge and give it trample. And if they kill my huge reach trample guy, it falls off and I get to keep a huge reach trample guy. Cool. Yeah, I think this is a killer in limited, but really not anywhere outside of that. I'll give this card a 1.75, but it's virgin on 2. It's virgin on. You have a Pauper deck that could use this? Yeah, it could be playable in Pauper. Nyxborn Unicorn is 2 mana for... That rhymes. I like how it bars. Look at that. Nyxborn Unicorn, 2 mana. 1 and a white for a 2/2 Unicorn. It's an enchantment creature with Bestow 4 mana. It also has Mentor. That means whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on an attacking creature with lesser power. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has Mentor. The Bestow cost is too high. I don't love this thing. I'll give it a 1.25. Obstinate Gargoyle is 1, a white and a black for a 2/2 artifact creature. It's a gargoyle. It has flying as long as it's modified, and it has persist, so when it dies, if it doesn't have any -1/-1 counters, you return it to the battlefield under your control with a -1/-1 counter. See how that works? Kind of cool in draft, right? Because you get like 2 flying blockers, you know, if you can modify it. It's okay, but still just like 1.5. Probably the lowest score I've ever given to an Orzhov card, right? Ocelot Pride, it's a lot of people talking about this thing, baby. A single white mana for a 1/1 cat with first strike and lifelink and ascend. That means if you have 10 or more permanents, you have the city's blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, you get a 1/1 white cat creature token. Then, if you have the city's blessing, for each token you control that ETB'd this turn, you get a token that's a copy of that token. So, you know, if you have the city's blessing, which is not hard to get, by the way, you'll get 2 cats every single turn, plus whatever other tokens that you're making. But at the very least, this is a 1 mana 1/1 first strike lifelink, blocks Ragavans. That's kind of sweet, you know. Great 1-drop just to get started with, because it's not too hard. Like, you don't just have to deal combat damage with it. There's a million ways to gain life. And any turn that you gain life, you get a 1/1 cat creature. So whether you're in a strict life gain deck or not, the card is really cool. Just altogether, I do think there are some deck building concessions one has to make. You have to have a fair number of permanents in your deck. You have to care about gaining life to some extent, right? The card's really, really good in those decks, and I don't think it's too hard to conceptualize. You know, a white X deck that cares about those things and can pull those things off. So just really good. One of the stronger cards in the set on some levels, but also might be a bust. This is one of those that I feel like a lot of people are talking about, but has a chance to be a little busty and not go the distance or anything. But that said, I will still boost this thing's score a good bit and give it a 3.5. I have high hopes for this. I really, really do. Let's move on, though, to Undo Not Master, 4 mana, 2, a white and a black for a 2/2 core rogue. This also has an adventure, by the way. The adventure is Throw a Line. White and a black for a sorcery. Distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. But the creature half of this is a 2/2 lifelink. Whenever another modified creature you control dies, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Not Master, which is better than it looks because this will quickly become a 4/4 and then a 6/6 or whatever. That's not bad, but it's still mostly like a drafty card. So 1.5, even with the adventure, 1.5. Party Thrasher is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/4. Lizard Wizard, that rhymes. Non-creature spells you cast from exile have Convoke. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may discard a card. If you do, exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You can play that card this turn. This card's a 4. This card's a 4, man. Absolutely busted in like burn decks, I would imagine. So long as you have the requisite number of creatures to make it work. That's the only awkward thing about the card, is that it wants you to play non-creatures, but also wants you to play creatures. And sometimes, again, those are just awkward is the best word for them. So there is that. But, you know, Young Pyromancer is a creature that wants you to play spells. Who cares? You know what I mean? Who gets so good? But I do think that's the one thing kind of holding the card back. But all that said, I still think the card is nasty, dude. This is cost reduction on a non-boltable 2-drop that also draws you 2 cards a turn most of the time. You can turn the discard into an upside, discard extra lands too. It's not a big deal. I think this is actually one of the strongest cards in the set. So I feel weird, but 4? I think this is seriously like one of the most playable 2-drops in the set. And that's really saying something for Modern, because that is a very 2-drop centric kind of format. Just unbelievable. I think this card is not the best card in the set, but up there. I think it's in the top 5 or so. Path of Annihilation is 4 mana, 3 and a green for an enchantment with Devoid. When it ETBs, create 2/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sack this creature, add a colorless mana. Eldrazi you control have tap, add a mana of any color. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, you gain 4 life. This is 4 ramps for 4 mana. It might not look like it, but what this actually does is it's an explosive vegetation sort of when it comes into play, because you can pay the 4 mana, get the 2 spawn, and immediately get 2 mana if that's what you want to do. But you don't want to do that. What you want to do is untap next turn with the spawn in play and with this card in play. tap the spawn for mana, and then sack them for mana, and you'll have 9 mana that turn if you drop the land. Pretty good. Pretty good. It's very easy to play this on 4, and then on the next turn, or play this on 3 or whatever, and then the next turn, cast the thing with 7 mana value or greater, gain your 4 life, which isn't nothing. Gaining 4 life ain't nothing, Jack, because you'll be gaining 4 life a turn for 2 or 3 turns if the game keeps going. You know, that ain't bad at all. But what's really tempting about this is, especially if you already have a couple of spawn in play, tapping them for any color and then sacking them is potentially super busted. So I'm actually going to give this card a 2.75. I think there's something here. I not quite probably modern playable, but this is one of those that like might catch people by surprise. It really might. Pearlier Imperial Advisor is 3 mana, 1 and 2 white for a 3/4 legendary Fox Advisor. Enchantment spells you cast have affinity for auras. Whenever you cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent you control, draw a card. Oh, that's really good text, man. Like, I think 3 mana is a bit much, but it does have 4 toughness for unboltability in modern. It also has lifelink, and a 3 mana 3/4 lifelink is actually really good stats, especially against aggro. I feel like it's just brick walls. A lot of aggro decks, even in modern. So that's good in and of itself. Now, affinity for auras. If you have even 1 aura on the table, you know, enchantment spells you cast are -1 to cast. That's a Jukai Naturalist. That's a pretty good card, you know. If you have 2 auras out, everything aura, you know, enchantment, not just auras, but enchantments you cast cost 2 less to cast if you have 2 auras is busted. But obviously it's kind of a lot of work to go through. But that said, there's a lot of card draw on this. I think the stats are there, you know. So as much as I called this like a commander only card, the day I previewed it, the more I read it, the more I look at it, the more I think like they pushed it slightly. So I'll give the card a 3 and kind of leave it at that. Leave it right at that. Petrifying Meddler. 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 4/5 Eldrazi with Devoid. When you cast it, tap up to 1 target creature, put a stun counter on it. Thing also has random reach that's way down there on the bottom of the card. Kind of sneaks up on you. It's also a blue guy with reach. You don't see that too often, but one way or the other, 1. Card gets a 1. Felia, Exuberant Shepherd is 2 mana for... Look at this lunatic right here. It's just like a little corgi. I love it. There's corgis in Magic the Gathering. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 dog. It's a legendary creature with flash, and when it attacks, exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of your next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Felia, so you can exile your opponent's stuff so this attacks more easily. I kind of like that. But mostly you're blinking your own stuff. Super, super cute card. Oh my god, dog, Celestial Trader says in chat. You're absolutely right. OMG dog. A lot of people have been talking about this. Very, very cute that it has flash. Very cute. You can save one of your guys with it. Why can't I remember the card right now? It's like a 2 mana flash. It's a cat. It's a cat, ironically. White Mane Lion. It's like a White Mane Lion. You can save your own guy. You can blink it for value. Or you can blink their dude for, again, tempo or value. It's all very, very cool. So, card just a nice little package. I'm not sure that it's quite enough for modern. Standard, this card would for sure see some play, I think. And actually be kind of an important card in the format. Whereas in modern, I think that it's just a different beast. You know what I mean? A different beast entirely. Cards have to be very, very good. And although I do think this is very good, I can't really give this more than a 3 either. Not really. You know? But maybe it's a really fun commander. Maybe it's that. Flage. Titan of Fire's Fury is 3 mana, 1 in Boros for a 6/6 legendary Elder Giant. It's a lot like a Kroxa or a Euro. When an ETB, sack it unless it escaped. When it ETBs or attacks, you get to cast Lightning Helix. And you escape it for 4 mana. 2 red, 2 white. Exile 5 other cards from your yard. So this is really good. I think that this really puts Boros Burn back on the menu. You got Lightning Strike, you got Boros Charm, you got this, you got Bolt, you got Skull Crack. Like, what a deck is really coming along, baby. And like later on in the game, it's going to be very easy to exile 5 burn cards from your yard, get yourself another iteration of Lightning Helix from the CTBs, and it's a 6/6 they have to deal with. Just kind of a finishing maneuver, elbow drop off the top rope for these Boros burn decks, and I really like this card. I'm going to give it a 3.25, and I think that's higher than a lot of people would rate it, but I do think there's something really good about this. I like that Modern Horizons 3 introduced a bunch of cards that are kind of new build-arounds rather than just like, oh, this slots directly into this existing deck. This may be a build around. It's one of those cards, but I think it's like very much worth doing so. This is a good card. Phyrexian Ironworks is not Krark Clan Ironworks. Not even close. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an artifact. Whenever you attack, you get an energy counter. You can pay. You can tap it and pay 3 energy to create a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token at sorcery speed. You have to tap it. Why can't I just pay 3 energy and get a 3/3? Why am I tapping it? It's not that great. 1.5. Pinnacle Monk is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 2/2 prowess. When it ETBs, return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Not good, but it does have an untapped red source on the other side of it. So I guess that's fine. Still, 2.25. Planar Genesis. I was really surprised this didn't have any frame treatment whatsoever. It would have looked really good in retro frame, but alas, this is a green and a blue for an instant. Look at the top 4 of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't, put a card from among them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So just worse than Growth Spiral, even worse than Growth Spiral than I thought that it was when I first read it. But still, either Impulse or Growth Spiral, a ramp spell on turn 2 at instant speed, these are still very good. These are still really, really good, you know? So unlike Growth Spiral, if you don't have an extra land in your hand, this will find it for you most of the time too. So that's worth noting. Altogether 3. Just a solid 3. Chill Gaming Incorporated, thanks for your 34 months. Good Lord. So many months. 34 months with this amazing community. Keep up the great work. Quick question. Do you think we'll win at Clash at the Castle? Who do you think will win at the Clash at the Castle? Priest or Drew? Drew wins a Clash at the Castle. Power Balance is 2 red mana for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. If the 2 spells have the same mana value, so it's not counterbalance, it's fair counterbalance. Rather than them not getting their spell, you get a spell. That's better in terms of fun and fairness and all that, and like what's actually fun to experience in a game of Magic. That's more fun, but you know, it's also not as broken as counterbalance. So really neat card here, but I'm still going to give this a solid 3. I think this is really good. I think it's still really good. Like Modern Burn could maybe use this. I don't know. Like every time you cast a 2-drop, I get a 2-drop burn spell. Oh, you cast a 1-drop? I'll just get a lightning bolt, maybe, you know. Some way to scry stuff to the top. Like, it could work. It could, but 3's probably too high. Like 3's probably too high, but I would have given counterbalance like a 2 when I first saw it. Like, oh, this is lame. This is stupid. But no, we were all wrong about counterbalance, and I think I don't want to make the same mistake. Primal Prayers is 4 mana. The best art in the set. Again, shout out to Ron Spears. Good job. 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for an extremely fake abeyance. It's an energy-focused abeyance. That's not good. It's Allurin. I'm thinking abeyance is a different card. This is an Allurin. Fake Allurin. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. You may cast creature spells with mana value 3 or less by paying energy rather than paying their mana cost. If you cast a spell this way, you may cast it as though it had flash. That's really, it's pretty good, man. It's actually really, really hard to evaluate this for like real competitive play, especially at 4 mana. It's probably just not playable at 4 mana in like 1v1 environments, but still a really cool callback. I like cool callbacks. I will give this a 2.5 or something, but it may be way better than that. It may be like a 4 for all I know, but I don't think so. Propagator Drone is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Now you can pay 4 mana to make a colorless spawn token. Cool thing about that is that creature tokens you control have evolve. What a line of text. What a line of commander text that is, baby. My creature tokens, all of them, not just the spawns, not just Eldrazi, any creature tokens have evolved. That's cool, dude. So 2.75. Like, I really think it's a super abusable line of text. I really do. Proud Pack Rhino is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3 Rhino. When it ETBs, you either put a shield counter on a permanent or proliferate. Draft card 1.5. Psychic Frog is a black and a blue for a 1/2 frog. And when it deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, you draw a card. If you discard a card, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Frog. Exile 3 cards from your graveyard to have Frog gain flying until end of turn. So really, really cool, dude. It's like a wild mongrel or a card like that, right? Discard a card for a +1/+1 counter in this case, which is disgusting, but it's also an Ophidian. Just an Ophidian for 2 mana. Nasty. I really want to say this is actually modern playable because it feels reanimation strategies and other, like, you know, stuff that can play out of its graveyard really, really well. You can play this on 2, and just like a wild mongrel or whatever, suddenly It's a 5/6, you know, like really easily is a 5/6. Like before they know it, for just a couple of mana. You can have it fly over. It draws cards too. It just does everything for you, dude. It fuels itself because it draws and discards, right? You draw a card, you discard the card to put a counter on it, draw the card, put a +1/+1 counter. It's so good, dude. I like this card a lot. And even though it might be way too cute for 2024 modern play, I think this would have been right at home in like 2012, you know what I mean? We might be way past it in 2024. I just still think this is a very cool Magic card. Wears a retro frame super well too, by the way, for what that's worth. It's worth a lot in my book. Not score-wise, just, you know, morale points. Still, I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think this is really, really, really close. And yeah, obviously related to Psychotog, obviously. But I see a couple of different cards when I look at this. And neither one are, obviously, honestly, weirdly, neither one are Psychotog, although they should be. But just awesome Magic card here that I think is just a callback for the old heads, but may have real relevance. May have real relevance. So 2.75 is the least I can do for it. Pyretic Rebirth is 4 mana, 2 a black and a red for an instant. Return an artifact or creature from your graveyard to your hand. Rebirth deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Can't go face with it, a little bit lame. It is instant speed though, and you kind of don't expect it to be for like a, you know, raised dead effect. That can also hit artifacts too. That's random, but interesting that can hit artifacts. Altogether, instant speed removal spell with the kind of card advantage mode on it. It's neat, but nowhere outside of limited for this kind of 4 mana rate, you know, so 1.75. Quest for the Necropolist is the quest landfall enchantment for 1 black. That whenever you landfall, it gets a quest counter, and then you can pay 6, and you get the ability costs -1 to cast for each quest counter on it. And you can just put a card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. A graveyard, by the way, not just yours, a graveyard. And that's really good for a single mana, but you probably won't actually pop this until turn 3 or 4. But I still think it's very good. I think even if it costs 3 mana to pop this, it's still a 3 mana reanimation spell. That's good. It's so good on the turn that you cast it, right? So, love it. You could theoretically like play this on 1, landfall on 2 to get a quest counter, put something in your yard, landfall on 3 to get a quest counter, and then what does it cost? 4? So yeah, you're mostly going to do this on 4. But still not bad considering it's only going to cost you a couple of mana on 4 after your land drop. It's altogether really good design, and breakable design too, for what that's worth. And I think it's worth something, right? So it's a good card. I want to give this a 2.75 as well. Just really walks up to the line. We'll actually give this one a 2.9. Ral Monsoon Mage is 2 mana, 1 and red for a 1/3 legendary human wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell during your turn, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Ral Monsoon deals 1 damage to you. If you win the flip, you may exile Ral. If you do, turn him over. Turn him over. Ral Leyline Prodigy is 2 loyalty. And when he enters the battlefield, he gets an additional loyalty counter for each instant and sorcery you've cast this turn. So theoretically, he's really 3 loyalty most of the time. But you can stack up a bunch of spells while his ability's on the stack that flips him over. You could have more. Either way. +1 until your next turn. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I got to pay a loyalty for the static ability on his other side. That seems weird. -2, he deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Draw a card if you control a blue permanent other than Ral. I don't know why it just doesn't cast Electrolyze. I don't know why you have to have a blue permanent for this to draw a card. It seems really dumb to me. Also, -8, exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may cast instant and sorcery spells from among them this turn without paying their mana cost. So, if you're able to cast a bunch of instant sorceries the turn that you cast this over, while its ability is on the stack that does flip it over, then suddenly you get to the ultimate really fast, but that's not going to happen very often. I don't like this one as much as I like some of the other ones. It is 2 mana to get into play, and it's theoretically easy to flip over, but you have to flip a coin to flip it over, so it's not as easy as you might think. You might lose 3 flips in a row, and then he just kind of sucks, you know? And even once he's a planeswalker, he kind of sucks a little. So I'm just going to give this one like a 2.75, like under a 3. Under a 3, I think this one gets, dude. Ral and the Implicit Maze, 4 or 5 mana even. 3 and 2 red for a Saga. On chapter 1, the implicit maze deals 2 damage to each creature and each planeswalker your opponents control. That's the Elder Dragon Wars first chapter, and that costs 1 less. Impress me. Chapter 2, you may discard a card. If you do, exile the top 2 of your library. You may play them till the end of your next turn. Okay. So we got a pseudo wrath effect and card advantage so far. On chapter 3, create a Spellgorger Weird. In case you've never seen Spellgorger Weird, it's a 2/2 weird creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature, put a +1/+1 counter on the weird. So, why does it just give you a Spellgorger Weird? That's actually super cute. Okay. 5 mana for a pseudo sweeper that also damages your opponent and draws you 2 cards and gets you at least 2 power and toughness, if not way more. It's too much. Still too much. 5 mana is too much. 1.75 fun and draft. Razorgrass Ambush is a white untapped land on one half, and on this half, it's 2 mana for an instant that deals 3 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. Pretty okay, 2.5. Reckless Pyro Surfer is 2 mana. Awesome looking card here. I like the concept of it. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 human scout with haste and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Pyro Surfer gains Battle Cry until end of turn. Note that each instance of Battle Cry does trigger separately, so if you're able to landfall 2, 3, 4, that's a lot of Battle Cry. I want this to be good so bad. Like super, super bad, but it's probably not very good. 1.5. Recruiter of the Guard, kind of the Imperial recruiter of the set. This is 3 mana for a 1/1 human soldier. When at ETB, search your library for a creature with toughness 2 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Fine. Kind of tough to rate it. You know, I'm mostly rating it on commander playability, but I do think a modern deck or two might want this effect. Even though Imperial Recruiter is already in modern, I still think it's possible that Recruiter of the Guard is what you go for instead, depending on what you're doing. So, you know, what's the actual score on the card? 3.25. I think this 3.25 mostly for commander play, but this is a phenomenal tutor. It deserves every bit of that score. Refurbished Familiar is playable in Pauper Affinity and will probably go there. This is 4 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature zombie rat with affinity for artifacts and flying, and when it ETBs, each opponent discards a card. Now, if an opponent can't discard a card, you draw a card. For each opponent who can't do that, you draw a card. So, like, on a crazy table, an opponent discards a card and you draw 2. You know what I mean? Man, that's good, dude. I really like this thing. Mostly, again, in Pauper Affinity, where, you know, you're casting a Burglar Rat. You're casting a 1 mana, 2/1 flying Burglar Rat. And that is a busted. Busted, brother. Like, I think this card is great. And I'm going to give it a 3, and I'm serious. This card's a 3. Like, it might even see Pauper Affinity play. Not Pauper, but Modern Affinity play. It is potentially that good. You know, Frogmite, not quite Frogmite, but close to Frogmite with flying and an ETB trigger. This is a phenomenal. This is a very good Magic card. Reiterating Bolt is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Replicate, pay 3 energy. Reiterating Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So for each time you pay 3 energy, you get to deal 3 damage to a thing. And that could be really, really good if you have enough energy. But ultimately, I think this is mostly drafty, right? So I'll give it a 1.75. Retrofitted Transmogran is a black mana for a 1/1 zombie artifact creature. You can pay 4 mana and return it from your yard to the battlefield tapped with 2 +1/+1 counters. So one of these, you know, Sanitarium Skeleton, Reassembling Skeleton. There's like 3 more of them like that, but this one's kind of joining the family. I can't really give this more than a 2. Revitalizing Repast is a single Golgari hybrid. For an instant, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. It gains indestructible till end of turn, but on the other side is a tapped black-green land. This is maybe the single best MDFC in the set. It is very close, I think, on some counts, but this is almost certainly the best. It's close. Yeah, this is really, 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 really good. Like, why wouldn't you want this card in your deck anyway? And it's a land. There are probably better protection spells, but none of those protection spells come with a land stapled to them. This is also, you know, you can play it if you have, you know, mono black. You know, you can't do that with Snakeskin Veil, but you can with this. And altogether, this is a good card. I'm going to give this a solid 3. Very, very good MDFC. This is super, super good. Riddlegate Gargoyle. Somebody said, really? In chat? Like, you know, as in, is this card, does this card really exist? I think that's what they meant by that. At least a 2.75. MDFCs are strong in and of themselves, but that one especially, I think is incredibly strong. Solid 3. Riddlegate Gargoyle. This is white and blue for a 2/2 artifact creature. It's a gargoyle with flying. When it ETBs, you get 3 energy counters. Whenever you attack, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, a creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. Why can't I talk? Because we're halfway through. But this is going to super shock, I think, a lot of people. I think a lot of people think this is probably close to like a 2.25, 2.25, or 2.5. This is a 3.25, and I honestly think it could be higher. I am editing myself by saying this is a 3.25. Yeah, seems like an uncommon. Yeah, it should. This card should 100% be uncommon every day. This card should be uncommon, but they made it common to make it Pauper playable. And in Pauper, it is insanely playable. Jeskai Affinity is a deck in Pauper already, and this is an artifact. That's good for Affinity. 3 energy. That's awesome. Imagine going, turn 1, the blue spell that draws a card and gets you 2 energy. Then turn 2, you play this guy. 2/2 flyer and 5 total energy. Like, oh my goodness. It's so good. I really think this has an awful lot going for it. 2/2 flying body for 2 mana and 3 energy is just busted. 3.25. Let's go. Ripples of Undeath. The Black Sylvan Library. This thing right here. I really can't give this more than a 2.75, but if this were a list that didn't regard modern and all and only cared about Commander, this would be like a 3.5. You know what I mean? It'd be right up there, but I'm probably going to try to order a copy of this. I hope that it goes down to like $1 at some point, and it probably will, if I'm honest, but you can get a Phyrexian Arena for $1. Why can't I get this for $1? Black Sylvan Library, like, I want it. I want it every day, and it mills you the cards that you don't elect to draw. So I just think this card is kind of nuts, but maybe not modern playable nuts. I have to give it, I'll give this card a 3, actually. I say I will give this card a 3, and I really want to give it a 3.25, but it's a 3. Royal Cartographer is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 Merfolk Rogue with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy counter. You can also tap it, pay 6 to draw 3 cards. I definitely think there's something to landfall, get an energy. I think that the landfall decks the energy decks probably just want this, because this is going to add up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 energy over the course of the game, especially on a line where I go this on turn 2, turn 3 turn 3 play another one and drop a land and get 2 energy because I have 2 of these in play. I think that's great. Really, really good. And I'm not, again, sure about modern playability on it. Depends on how good energy is. But I think if energy is a real deck and carries blue, then it probably carries this card. I think it's that good. Massive role player. And again, even commander decks that care about energy almost certainly want this. And even landfall decks in commander that can do a trick or 2 with energy might want something like this. But I just think whenever a land enters, get energy is a pretty good line of text. So I'm actually going to give this a 2.75. Rose Cotton Knight is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 3/4 human knight with vigilance. When it ETBs, look at the top 6 of your library. You may reveal an artifact or enchantment card from among them, put them into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. If you didn't put a card into your hand this way, Rose Cotton gets a +1/+1 counter. So this is almost certainly decent card advantage, but it is 5 mana for a 3/4. Kind of tries to be like a Knight Errant of Eos, but not really. Just a decently statted creature to put cards into your hand, but it's not very good. It just really isn't. I'll give this a 1.25. Roshin Roaring Prophet is 4 mana, 2 a red and a green for your new commander. It's a 4/4 legendary giant shaman, and when it ETBs, you mill 6. You may put a card with X in its mana cost from among them into your hand. Tap, reveal any number of cards with X in their mana cost in your hand. Add 2 colorless for each card revealed this way. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X. Again, just really neat commander. I don't think it's too much aside from that. I will give this a 2.5 or something, but Want to build around it. Rush of Inspiration is 3 mana, 1 and 2 Is It hybrids for an instant. Draw 2 and discard a card at random unless you pay 2 energy. But this also has a tapped Is It dual land on the other side of it. 2.25 for this. I hate the word random so much. Sage of the Unknowable is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 0/4 human wizard. Tap for a colorless, but you can only spend the mana on a colorless spell or to activate any ability. Cute. A little colorless ramp here. See a lot of this in blue, don't we? Like ramp for instants and sorceries and other weird stuff. So 1.5. Sarpedian Simulacrum is a single red mana for a 1/4 artifact creature. It's a gobbo with haste. You can pay 3 and a red and sacrifice Simulacrum, and it deals 4 damage to a creature, which is pretty cute for a raging goblin. Also happens to be an artifact. That might matter for a thing or two, but I'm not giving it more than a 1.5, and that hurts my heart. Scurrilous Sentry is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/3 human knight rogue with menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, it connives. So not really a great. I'll give this card a 1. Scurry of Gremlins is 4 mana, 2 a red and a white for an enchantment. When it ETBs, create 2 1/1 red gobbo creature tokens. Then you get an amount of energy equal to the number of creatures you control. You can also pay 4 energy to have creatures you control get +1/+0, gain haste until end of turn. Better than it looks like, but still not actually very good. You know, if you're playing this right, it's probably going to be 2 goblin tokens or gremlin tokens, and maybe 4 or 5 energy. You know, it does remind me of like Flamekin Zealot, and nobody knows what that card even is, but Flamekin Zealot was really important in the Bridge to Know or Bridge from Below deck, like 15 years ago, to give all your zombos haste and win the game that way. And you could do similar, like put a bunch of creatures into play, win that turn combos with this, but I really don't think it's going to even do that. Just kind of a cute card that I'm going to give a 2.25 to. Serum Visionary is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Vidalcan Wizard. When it ETBs, draw a card, and then scry 2. That's the wrong order. You really should strike that, reverse it, or whatever. But, you know, I guess it's still kind of a neat enter the battlefield trigger. I'm going to give this a 1.75. Shadow of the Second Sun, maybe the best looking card in a retro frame, because the art also looks like old Magic art. Like, this card looks like a card from Visions to me. But card costs 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for an aura that enchants a player. At the beginning of Enchanted Player's post-combat main phase, there is an additional beginning phase after this. So instep happens after the added untap, unkeep, and draw steps. You basically don't get a second main phase with this card in play. Or whoever it's enchanted to. Cute card, but really just cute, even though I'm sure there's some brain crunching stuff you can do with it in Commander. I can't really give this more than like a 2.25. As cute as it looks, it's not. It costs too much. Even in Commander, it's just like the ultimate build around. I don't know. It's not great. Shifting Woodland is a land. Look at that. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest, and it taps for green. If you have Delirium, you can pay 2 and 2 green to have Woodland become a copy of a permanent card in your yard until end of turn. But of course, activate this only if you have Delirium. There are 4 or more card types among cards in your yard. This is perhaps the best of this cycle. You can turn it into a giant creature for 4 mana. You can turn it into a giant artifact for 4 mana. All this is stupid. It's probably been in play for a few turns at that point, so it basically has haste if it's whatever creature you turn it into, right? This card is very good, right? Yeah, Omniscient, turn it into an Omniscience. That's very, very cute. I like that. See, wheels turning for people in the chat already. Very, very neat Magic card right here that I think, again, just no opportunity cost to play the thing. And I think it's much easier to hit Delirium than it is to play a million artifacts for the, or pay 5 mana and play a bunch of historic cards for, the white one. This one is a relatively steep cost at 4 mana to get it going, but it's basically the ultimate creature land, you know what I mean? Like, and it hits more than just creatures, so just an incredible card that's going to be in like every green Commander deck and probably a bunch of green Modern decks too. Again, you have to facilitate Delirium, but that's not as hard as it sounds. Not at all. Just great land. 3.75. We're in that territory with stuff like this. Shell Gengar, Sire of Famine is 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 6/6 Elder Demon. It's legendary and it has flying. Sacrifice another creature to make a blood token, but if you sacked an angel, create a number of blood tokens equal to the toughness instead. You can bait 3 Orzhov hybrids and sacrifice 6 blood tokens to return each creature card from your yard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to their other types. You could do this all in one turn if you want to pay 8 mana for what is effectively going to be a living end, I think, a lot of the time. Really, really cool card here, man. I've already kind of gushed about this in Commander, where I think in Ellysil Core, this is like a day one include, and hopefully it's just a couple of bucks. I really, really hope it's just a couple of bucks, because I want to include this. There's so many weird loops you can get into, and they're not loops, because the things are going to come in with a finality counter on it, but even just like, okay, play this guy, sack all my guys, get blood tokens, sack all my blood tokens, get my guys back, and then get more like triggers for them coming into play, or because they have ETB triggers, whatever. Like, these loops are actually probably game ending, I think, a lot of the time, in such a way that this is a must play card in like Aristocrat Commander. Outside of that, though, I don't think it's super good. 5 mana is too much for this card, so I can't really give it more than like a 2.75, but I love it so much. Siege Smash is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an instant with split second. That means it basically just cannot be responded to by anything. You choose 1, destroy target artifact, or target creature gets +3/+2, gains trample until end of turn. This is actually a really, really good spell in a lot of ways. Those are great spreads. +3/+2 and trample especially is really neat. This is one I feel like they could print in standard, though. If they would just not be cowards and put split second back in standard. I really love this ability. I always have. I do not, as you may have noticed, I do not like to have spells countered or things interacted with while I'm trying to do something cool. So split second is awesome. Still, 1.75 for a card like this. Signature Slam is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Put a +1/+. It's literally an elbow drop too. You gotta love that. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you controlled, and each modified creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a creature you don't control. There's a lot of you control or don't control on this card, but basically it's +1/+1 counter, then all your dudes gang tackle one guy. Cute. I feel really bad for the poor dinosaur in the art here. His ribs are going to be bruised, but anyway, it's probably like a 2, so it's not even a 2. It's like a 1.75. Sink into Stupor is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. Return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and it has an untapped blue source on the other side. The Golgari protection spell is probably the best dual land MDFC in the set. This is up there. If it's not the best untapped MDFC, it's like top 2 or 3. This is a very good Magic card, guys. I really think that 3 mana for this is much better than you think. Much, much better than you think. It's kind of a worse Remand or a better Venser, depending on how you want to put it. It gets around uncounterability too. That's one thing you got to point out. And it's a land on the other side. So this card is like a 3.5. Like, probably, right? I'm giving this a 3.5. Heck yeah. 6 is up next. Not Wrenn and 6. Just plain old 6. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/4 legendary Treefolk, Rith Reach. Whenever it attacks, you mill 3 cards. You may put a land from among them into your hand. As long as it's your turn, non-land permanents in your yard have retrace. That means that you can discard a land card and pay the card's mana cost that you're trying to recast and recast it. It's kind of cute. Always looking for something to do with extra lands in your hand, This is neat. It's kind of like a Blossoming Tortoise a little bit, but it costs less to cast, has theoretically just better toughness, better stats. It also has reach, but I still don't think it's that good. Like, I don't think it's there in Modern. You know what I mean? And I don't think it sees that much play in Commander. I just think it's there to be cool. But maybe I'm wrong. It can't be boltable, but it does have to attack. It does have to, be in play for more than a turn to get real value. So I'm not going to rate it too high. 2.5. Skittering Precursor is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 3/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid and Menace. Whenever you sacrifice a non-token permanent, create a spawn token. It has to be non-token so it doesn't go infinite with itself, creating spawn tokens, giving you infinite mana for 3 mana. That'd be the best Magic card of all time. Instead, it's just kind of a fine Magic card. And I want to play this in, again, Judith, Prosper, Tomebound. I know Prosper sacks a lot of treasures, but it sacks a lot of other stuff too. My builds do. So suddenly this becomes like ramp whenever I sack stuff. You know, Mayhem double triggers and sack stuff, you know, pretty good. And like new things to sack so I can get more triggers off Mayhem Devil and ramp. Like, I don't know. It's all really, really good. And I'm going to give this card like a 2.75. I really like it. Skoa Ember Mage is 6 mana for a 4/4 Gabo Wizard. Enters the battlefield, deals 4 to any target. Grandeur, discard another card named Skoa, and sack 2 mountains. To cast Fire Blast, it deals 4 damage to any target. That's just Fire Blast, but you have to have one already in play, which is so cowardly on Wizard's part. This is just a red dragon otherwise. It doesn't even have flying, so I can't give the card more than like 2.25. Like, I'm serious. I really want this card to be better than it is. It is Pauper playable, but so. Smelted Charge Bug is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/3 insect artifact creature with menace. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy, and when it attacks, you may pay an energy. If you do, another attacking creature gets +1/+0, gains menace till end of turn. Better than it looks, but still not amazing. Maybe that Pauper energy deck we're talking about will play it. I'll give it a 2.25. Snapping Void Craw. Not Void Claw, this is a Void Craw right here. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 1/3 Eldrazi turtle with Devoid. You can tap it for 2 colorless mana, or you can pay 3 and colorless, tap it, draw a card. So, neat abilities on this thing. It is a bit boltable. I hate that about it, but at the same time, a 3 mana guy that taps for 2 colorless is at least worth talking about. 2.5. Sneaky Snacker. It's a sneaky snacker. This is a blue and a black for a 2/1 fairy rogue with flying. When you draw your 3rd card in a turn, return Snacker from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. 1.75. Maybe less, honestly. Snow Covered Waste. Best card in the set. This is a 4.75. I am, of course, joking. 1.5 for a Snow Covered Waste. Solar Transformer. This is 2 mana for an artifact that ETBs tapped and gets 3 energy to you when it ETBs. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay an energy and tap it to add a mana of any color. This card is very good, I think. I hate that it comes into play tapped, but it is a 2 mana rock that just gives you 3 energy. 2 mana, 3 energy, and an artifact, and taps for mana. That's all really, really good, dude. So I'm going to give this card a solid 3 and mean it and never look back. Solstice Zealot is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/3 Rhino Cleric. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy. You can tap it and pay an energy to tap a creature. Bad magic card, perhaps limited playable. It's a tapper. Sometimes those are okay. 1.25. Sorin Sexy Sephiroth Sorin of House Markov over here. He's got the boots too, just looking good. 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/4 legendary human noble with lifelink. And extort. That means whenever you cast a spell, you can pay a white-black hybrid. And if you pay that white-black hybrid, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain life equal to the life lost that way. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin, return it to the battlefield tapped. Transformed, rather, under his owner's control, and you get Ravenous Neonate. This is a 3 loyalty planeswalker with extort. You can also +2 to create a food token, -1 Sorin to deal damage equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn to any target, and -6 gain control of a creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin. A little bit weird that you have to have a white permanent. I don't understand it. Just give me the lifelink. It doesn't matter. But either way, this card is great. I'm pretty sure this card is great because all you have to do once he's out is gain 3 life. That is not actually very hard to do at all on turn 3. And then you will have post-combat main phase. Yeah. So you'll actually be able to use them on your turn 3. On turn 3, you will have a 3 loyalty planeswalker that is more likely a 5 loyalty planeswalker. But he might be a 2 loyalty planeswalker that casts a removal spell. And that's good too. You know, he basically casts like Lightning Helix. In a way, you could argue that this thing casts Lightning Helix on the turn that it flips over. Because you have to have gained at least 3 life, right? And Black-White Lifegain decks and like Commander and stuff, and, you know, Amalia and Commander, and even stuff like, you know, Elisil Core, they might want this because they gain a lot of life. But I think this might just be actual straight-up modern playable and make Lifegain much, much better because it's kind of a payoff for Lifegain decks. And this -1 is so righteously good. This -1 is very, very, very good. And the fact that it can just be like a 5 loyalty planeswalker on 3 super easy is also good. So Extort is a good ability to be carrying for no reason. Just altogether a great planeswalker here that I'm going to give a 3.25 to. I think it's about there. Sowing Mycospawn. Yeah, just minus him 3 times. Yeah, it's probably the best play pattern. Sowing Mycospawn is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 3/3 Eldrazi fungus with Devoid. You can kick this for 1 and a colorless. When you cast this spell, search your library for a land card, put it onto the field, shuffle up. You do that no matter what. But if you kick the spell, you exile a target land. So if you pay 6 mana for this, you ramp and get rid of one of their things, like one of their lands. It's land destruction. Just very adorable. You can also take out problem lands with this, which I think is cute. But even just like a hill giant, a 4 mana 3/3 that ramps you is very close to being there. It's not Topiary Stomper, and that's really doesn't see much modern play at all. That's just played in standard. But yeah, 4 mana, 3/3. I actually kind of want to put this in like mono green cube too, despite the kicker colorless, because I just think that this is a neat kind of simple design, right? Classic design. That can 2 or 3 for 1 even. It's just all really, really good. In a lot of ways, design-wise, I like the card. But I'm not going to give it more than like a 2.75, and I'm not even sure that it quite warrants that. If this was a standard printing, we'd be talking a lot. But it's not, so, you know how it is. Spawn Gang Commander, by the way, Nerdatronic, thank you for your new follow. And Chill Gaming Incorporated, thank you for your 34 months. Kabi, you followed. And Solemn Barrow, you followed since the last time I called out follows. Thank you very much. Spawn Gang Commander is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 2/2 Eldrazi Gabo with Devoid. When you cast this spell, create 3 spawn tokens. You can also pay 1 and a colorless and sack an Eldrazi to have Commander deal 2 damage to any target. So you get the joke, it's a Siege Gang Commander. But it's the best version of Siege Gang Commander ever printed. We've seen Siege Gang. We've seen a couple of like offshoots of Siege Gang. Cloud Goat Ranger almost counts too, but this is just like easily the best version. This pays you back 3 mana the turn that you play it, theoretically. You know what I mean? It's really, really good, dude. So I like this a good bit. I'm not going to score it too high, but it's Siege Gang Commander, but better. Let's give it a 3 just for old time's sake. It's probably not quite worth that, but I'm putting it there. Springheart Nantuko. I am still not exactly sure what this card, like how this card works. So this is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/1 enchantment creature, insect monk with bestow, 1 and a green. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 and a green if Springheart Nantuko is attached to a creature. So if it's bestowed and you get a land, you can pay 1 and a green. If you do pay 1 and a green, create a token that's a copy of the creature this is attached to. Now, if you didn't create a token this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. So I'm assuming that what this card says is, I have 2 issues with this. So I'm assuming that if it is attached to a guy and I don't pay the mana, I get a 1/1 insect. That's obvious, right? That should be obvious, but it's actually not as obvious as it seems when you first read the card, okay? But I'm pretty sure that if it's attached to a guy and I play a land and I don't have the 2 mana, I still get a 1/1 insect, okay? My real problem with this is if this is not attached to a creature, if this is just sitting on the table by itself, a 1/1 guy, do I still get an insect token when I landfall? If this is not attached to a guy, it still has landfall, I get a 1/1, right? Chat? Yes, I thought so. It's just worded in the absolute most awkward way it could possibly be worded. And that kind of is weird. But yeah, you get the token if you landfall. Again, even if it's not attached to the creature, right? You may pay 1 and a green if it's attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's copy that creature. If you didn't create a token this way, make a 1/1. So I'm assuming that means if it isn't attached to a guy, you guaranteed get a 1/1. And if that is the way it works, which it seems like it is, that's so good. That's so good. Right? Landfall make a 1/1 is Scoot Swarm, right? Almost. I mean, I guess eventually you get copies of Scoot Swarm, and that's what makes Scoot Swarm good. But, yeah, if it's attached, you don't get an insect, you just get the... Well, no, right? No. If you didn't create a token this way, you get a 1/1. So, if it's attached, see how confusing it is? if you didn't pay the 1 green, you didn't get a copy, right? But if you didn't create a token that way, you get a 1/1. So you still get the insect. But see, the chat's everyone's confused. Still, I can't spend too much time on any one card, like I've said. But this works the way I think it does, and so I have to give it a 3. I have to give it a 3. You don't get a copy. I know, yeah, if you don't make a copy, you get an insect no matter what. Whether it's bestowed or just a creature. Right. It's good magic. That's a good magic card. Spymaster's Vault is the black land in this cycle. It enters tapped unless you have a swamp. It taps for black, and you can pay black and tap it and have target creature you control connive X, where X is the number of creatures that died this turn. It's not always going to get going, but on most turns, you can probably connive 1, 2, 3, whatever, depending on what happened in combat. Doesn't even have to be a combat that involved you on a commander table. That's cool. But again, opportunity cost is so low here that I think this slots into modern, and unlike some of these other lands that we've seen, the activation cost is really, really low. So I like this a lot. 3.5. One of the better of this cycle, almost certainly. Static Prison is a single white mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Prison leaves the battlefield. You get 2 energy counters. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, sacrifice Prison unless you pay an energy counter. This is a super, super good removal spell. I'm going to give this all the way up to a 2.75, very close to a 3. I'll actually say 2.82. We're in that territory. Strength of the Harvest is 2 and then a green-white hybrid for an aura that enchants a creature. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each creature and or enchantment you control. And there's a Selesnya dual land that's tapped on the other side of this. Amazing in like Sithis, and like there's a Bant Enchantress deck in Commander. Really, I think this is only for Commander. But the non-land part of this is dangerously close to like an All That Glitters for an extra mana with a land attached to it. That is so, so, so good. So good in a lot of ways. So I'm slipping this. I've been making Sithis for the last like 2 years without actually building Sithis. But this is a reason to have held off right here. I think this goes directly into Sithis and any other like Enchantress-y commander pile. I'm going to give this like a 2.75. I think it's really close, if not modern playable. I think it's really, really close though. Just really, really good line of text, man. Strix Serenade is a blue mana for an instant that counters a target artifact, creature, or planeswalker spell, and its controller creates a 2/2 blue bird. So is it better or worse or around the same as Swan Song? I'd say it's around the same as Swan Song, and Swan Song was a really good spell. A fantastic spell. So I have to give this like a 3. I think I just kind of have to give it, but I'll probably give it a 2.75 and call it a day. Let's do that. Stump Stomp. It's a 3. That card's a 3. Stump Stomp. It's fun to say. Stump Stomp is 2 mana, 1 and a green-red hybrid for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a creature or planeswalker you don't control. So a bite effect on a green-red Gruul-tapped dual land on the other half of this. That's just good too, It's just like all around a good magic card. 3, right? 2.7. Let's go 2.75. I think the tapped ones, even though they're dual lands, I think the tapped ones are just marginally worse than the untapped ones. Sundering Eruption is a sort of a stone rain. It's really like a Field of Ruin activation that also has creatures without flying can't block this turn stapled onto it, and then an untapped red source on the other side. So it's a good magic card. It's altogether pretty good, right? Is it worth putting in your deck? Not that much. It's not that great. 2.5. Suppression Ray is 5 mana, 3 and 2 Azorius hybrids. It has an Azorius tap land on the other side of it, but on this side, it's got tap all creatures target player controls. You may pay X energy, then choose up to X creatures tap this way and put a stun counter on each of them. Suckily, this spell is a sorcery, so you can't just do it on your opponent's combat step and leave their dudes tapped down for 2 turns. This is 5 freaking mana, and it costs you extra energy. This is a really bad MDFC, if such a thing can be said to exist. 2 for this card. Tameo, Inquisitive Student, is a single blue mana for a 0 through legendary. 0/3, legendary Moonfolk Wizard with flying. When it attacks, you investigate. When you draw your 3rd card in a turn, exile Tammy, return her to the battlefield transformed. You get Tameo Seasoned Scholar, a 2 loyalty planeswalker. +2. Till your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker that you control, it gets -1/-0 till end of turn. -3, return an insto or sorcery from your yard to your hand. If it's green, add a mana of any color. That's a cool ability. -7, draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library. Rounded up, you get an emblem that says you have no maximum hand size. God, Tameo is really good. Tamio is really good. All you have to do is cast like a brainstorm on turn 2 and you just get to flip her, and that's so good, man. Even if it's not, brainstorm, it's just draw your card for the turn and then play anything that draws 2 cards. Literally any of the hundreds of cards in Magic history that you can draw 2 cards for 2 mana in some way, shape, or form. Even if you have to discard cards after, it does not matter. Faithless Looting, right? You just turn 1 this, turn 2 Faithless Looting, Tamio Seasoned Scholar. Here we go, baby. Like, that's just seems very, very good and easy to get this on turn 2. And once you do that, you can easily have a 4 loyalty Planeswalker and then a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. It's going to be very hard to attack into you profitably, or Tamio profitably for that matter. The -3, though, is kind of where it's at. Returning an instant or sorcery from your yard to a hand is a great way to protect Tamio. Return a sweeper to your hand and then just play it again, still have your Tamio out. If you did return a green card, that mana of any color is really important. Mana generation on it too, like just kind of nasty. No one thing that it does is especially busted, but way more than the sum of its parts. I'm going to give this card a 4. I'm going to give this card a 4 and then probably regret it later, but still 4. Tamio meets the Surrey Circle, on the other hand, is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a saga. Chapter 1, until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, they get neutered by -2/-0 till end of turn. Chapter 2, discard any number of cards, investigate twice for each card discarded this way. Chapter 3, shuffle up to 3 target cards from your yard into your library. Chapter 2 is the secret of this, because you want to discard 5 or 6 cards and make, literally 10 or 12 clue tokens, which will work for stuff that wants artifacts in play. Affinity for artifacts, I guess, kind of matters, but anything that cares about the number of artifacts you have in play, like All That Glitters, for instance. Really, really sick with this mode if you can engineer some fun stuff. So it's cute, but I get the feeling it's a little bit too cute, and that's all it is. So 1.75. Temperamental Ooze Wag. Man, Pete Venters doing weird stuff since 93, and this one's no exception. 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 4/4 Ooze Brushwag. You can pay 2 and a green to adapt 2. Modified creatures you control have trample, which is a great line of text. Gotta say, that's all good. It's all well and good. Nose itches, just so you know. But I can't give this more than like a 1.5 or maybe 1.75, but I think 4 mana is a bit much. Tempest Harvester is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy. And you can pay an energy and tap it and loot. Draw a card, discard a card. So, again, kind of a take on a looter here, but not that great. 1.75. Territory Color is 5 mana for a 7/5 Devoid Reach with Landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature, reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put it in your hand, you can put it into your yard. Nice little landfall trick on this one. I'm going to give it a 1.75. Creation of Avacyn is the 3 mana black saga. Chapter 1, search your library for a card, exile it face down, shuffle up. Chapter 2, turn the exiled card face up. If it's a creature, you lose life equal to its mana value, idiot. Chapter 3, you may put the exiled card onto the battlefield if it is a creature card. Idiot like a fox. If you don't put it onto the battlefield, put it into its owner's hand. So kind of a 3 mana draw spell that delays by a couple of turns if you're playing it wrong. If you're playing it right, it is a reanimate. It is a reanimate that searches for the thing you want to reanimate. It reanimates any card in your entire library for free the turn that you do it. So you really don't care that it costs you a buttload of life, I think. I've seen people go back and forth. This is probably one of the more hotly debated cards in the entire set, and I've gone hot and cold on it from time to time, but I'm actually going to give this a 3 because, like, when you really think about it, the ability to search up any card in your any creature in your entire library, and then reanimate it. I say reanimate, but it's actually safer than reanimation because it's exile, and you just put it into play from exile. But yeah, being able to basically put this is 3 mana, put any creature from your whole library onto the table in a delayed way. And that's really strong. So I think it deserves a 3. Hunger Tide Rises, and mine does. I haven't really eaten much today. I'm super hungry right now. Hunger Tide Rises is a saga with 4 chapters. On the first 3 chapters, you get a 1/1 insect token. On chapter 4, you sack any number of creatures and then search your library and or yard for a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of creatures sacked this way. Put it on the table. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So 3 mana for any 3-drop in your deck, 4 turns later. Not very good, 1.5. Necro Bloom, baby. This is 1, a white, a black, and a green Ajani for a 2/7 legendary plant with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, Field of the Dead. Get a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. Land cards in your yard have Dredge 2, which is a stupid line of text, especially with like channel lands being a thing that we can play. You know what I mean? Just this with channel lands is outright broken, but dredging up lands in general is great, especially sacrificable lands. Or maybe you play your Bojuka Bog, sacrifice it, get it back. Play your Bojuka Bog, sacrifice it, get it back. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, whether your lands have ETB triggers or whatever. There's plenty of stuff. Also, obviously, fetch lands. This can dredge back up, which is potentially very gross. You know what I mean? Especially considering, you know, you can dredge things up and then get the landfall triggers to get plants off of them, and those plants are zombies later on. Shouldn't be too hard in a game of Commander, especially to turn this into a Field of the Dead on a body. So, just overall a fun Magic card. I don't think that it's very modern playable. But if it is modern playable, it's because that last line of text. Land cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2. That's great. So I'm going to give this card a 3.25, even though I don't think it quite verges into modern playability. I think it's going to be one of those all-time fun playable commanders that people search after, and the abilities are really, really fun to play. So mostly for commander playability, I think this is one of the more exciting commander cards in the set, but it's probably just that. Thief of Existence is 3 mana, 1 a colorless and a green for a 3/4 Eldrazi with Devoid when you cast this spell. Exile up to 1 target non-creature, non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 4 or less. If you do, Thief gains when this creature leaves the battlefield. Target opponent draws a card. So this is, you know, a green Fiend Hunter, right? A green Banisher Priest, a green Brutal Cathar, whatever. Like, and that's really, you just don't see this. I probably need to order for the mono green cube too, right? And like find a way to get colorless in there somehow, because this is just a great removal spell for a mono green cube. But it's just a good removal spell for green, period. So I do think we might end up seeing this in the odd green commander deck. A Skyclave Apparition. We can keep going with this. There's a bunch of white creatures like this, but not a whole lot. Annex Sentry, but not a whole lot of green ones. And I think that's really, really cool. So, like the guy a good bit. I'm going to give him a 2.75. Throbbing Charm, more like it, is, I don't know why, but it is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Choose one of these 3. Charm deals damage equal to twice the number of creatures you control to a creature, or destroy an enchantment, or destroy, or rather exile any number of target players' graveyards. Excellent utility sort of sideboard card right here. I think just really, really good, dude. Removal spell or enchantment removal or, you know, graveyard hate. Just fantastic. I don't know if it's quite main deckable, but it might be in a deck that plays a buttload of creatures. You know what I mean? But in modern, I think there's just better ways of doing things. This is very likely sideboard against the, you know, the second 2 modes. Then, well, you know you need the card. But altogether, very clean. Just very clean. I love charms. I love modal cards. I love versatility and, you know, freedom of choice and all that. So I'm going to give the card a 2.5. I think it's pretty strong. Thriving Skyclave is Skyclaw rather, is 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 3/2 cat dragon. Good creature types with flying. When it ETBs, you get 3 energy counters, and whenever it attacks, you may pay 3 energy. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on the sky. Coolest thing about this thing is that it reminds me of the lion from He-Man. Tiger from He-Man. Like the green tiger with yellow stripes that would follow Adam around. That guy, only he's got wings. Really, really cool. Not a great card. 1.5. Titan's Vanguard is 5 mana, 3 and Gruul for a 5/5 Eldrazi with Devoid. When you cast the spell and whenever Vanguard attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. This also has Trample. Drafty card, as much as it looks like it could be cute in like Commander or whatever. It's really, really drafty, I think. 1.5 on this. Toxic Deluge is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, pay X life. All creatures gets -X till end of turn. This card is very, very good. Card is very super stupid good, guys. It's a 3 mana Wrath. And 9 times out of 10, whatever, dude. I'll pay 4 life. Sure, just kill everything right now. Love this Wrath. Really, really love this Wrath, dude. 4. You know, like for commander playability, for potential modern playability, for the fact that it's a super playable wrath that isn't in white. That's awesome. You know, just I think that this might surprise people. I think this card's kind of flying under the radar in this set, but I actually think this is kind of easily one of the best cards in the set. I'll give it a 4. I'll do it just because I feel like it. It's more like a 3.5. Right? But it's not every day that you see a 3-mana black sweeper that kills everything, gets through indestructible too. Like, this card is really, really good, guys. It will see some play. Trickster's Elk is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/3, with Bestow for 2 mana. Enchanted creature loses all abilities, is in a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. Yet another card for the mono green cube. We need as much like good removal as we can get. And this is a pretty decent, like, quote unquote removal spell, you know? So neat thing. I have to give it like a 2.25. Triton Wavebreaker is a single blue mana for a 1/1 enchantment creature that is also a merfolk wizard. It has Bestow for 2 mana, and as long as it's a creature, it has prowess, but the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has prowess. That's actually kind of strongish, but probably not quite modern playable. All things considered, it's not even pauper playable. It really could have been common, guys. But either way, I'm going to give it a 1.75, even though I really, really like it. Tune the Narrative is a single blue mana for an instant. Draw a card. You get 2 energy. This is a 3.25. This card is potentially and very likely the best role play. Yeah, I'll say best role player in the entire set. I was going to pull back on that, but this is very likely the best energy creating card on a fundamental level, like on baseline level in terms of what you're getting for the rate and as early as you can cast it in the game. This is probably the best energy producing card in the set. Goes in every energy deck from now till the end of time. Literally no reason not to play this card. And is at least a 3.25. At least a 3.25. Tune the Narrative feels like Birthday Escape from LOR. I don't even know that card. Oddly. I should know that card, but I don't. It reminds me of Succession. And if you know why it reminds me of Succession, you know that I can't tell you why it reminds me of Succession. But anyway, yeah, this is instant speed, by the way. This card is an instant. It's absolutely gross. But anyway, Twisted Riddle Keeper is up next. 8 mana for a 5/5 Eldrazi Sphinx with a merge 5, a colorless, and a blue. When you cast, this also has flying, by the way. For some reason, they put these keyword abilities on Eldrazi at the bottom of the card. It makes no sense. I hate it. When you cast this spell, tap up to 2 target permanents. Put a stun counter on each of them. Normal magic card, 1.5. Ugin's Binding, 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an instant with Devoid. Return a non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile Binding from your yard. When you do, return each Cyclonic Rift, or better, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. You win the game when you cast a colorless spell. Mana value 7 or greater. This card's just absolutely broken, man. Like, it's decent tempo the turn that you play it. It could be better, but it's decent tempo the turn that you play it. And then when you do get your 7-drop, you win. You win the game. A little narrow and really only goes in like the one deck. You know what I mean? But God, it's so good in that deck. Yeah, and you just discard it too. Like if you have to discard it, mill it into your library or into your graveyard, you still get value off of it that way. These are all good things. You know, like if you want to look at it that way, it's just a free spell. You never even have to pay the 3 mana. Just mill it into your yard somehow. And then when you get your 7-drop colorless guy, it's just free. It's free. It's free to cast this. It's basically a one-sided wrath. Incidentally. An incidental one-sided sort of wrath. God, it's so stupid. This card is a bit much, and I'm going to give it a 3.75. Mostly because it's too narrow and only goes in the one deck, else it'd be more, but at least a 3.75. Ugin's Labyrinth, baby. Another kind of narrow card, but one of the best cards in the set. This is a land with imprint. When it ETBs, you can exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. Tap it to add a colorless, but if a card is exiled with Labyrinth, add 2 colorless instead. You can also tap Ugin's Labyrinth to return the exiled card to its owner's hand. That's a little tricky because, you know, if you have total 7 mana, you might think, hey, I can cast this 7-drop that I got underneath this Ugin's Labyrinth. But if you put the thing in your hand, now you only have 6 mana. So just keep that in mind, I guess. Either way, again, this is what, Ancient Tomb, I guess, is one of the better, analogs to it. But it's kind of a soul ring, just anytime. Just stick with lands, though. Anytime you see a land that taps for 2 mana, it's busted. Phyrexian Tower was pre-printed into Modern in this set. It's tap, sack a creature, get 2 black mana. That card's busted. That card is busted. It's always been busted. It's a broken Magic card. Gaia's Cradle, which I know taps for 1 million, right? But Nykthos taps for 1 million. I get that. But mostly, when you can tap a land for 2 mana without doing too much extra work, it is almost always broken. I think that there are plenty of lines, plenty of potential builds that leverage this card very easily. Very easily. Starting on turn 1. I'm going to give this card a 4.25. I really want to give it a 4, but I actually think it's even better. Even better than I think it is. And I've seen some people rip on this. I've seen people rip on this card. I think you're a fool if you do. I think this is easily one of the best cards in the set, if not like the best card in the set. But that's a tough call. Just a land that taps for 2 starting on turn 1. Come on, dude. You'll be casting 2 drops on turn 1 with this card. And I don't think you understand how good that is. If you think this card is bad, you haven't played a whole lot of Magic, I guess. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but again, I could just, blather on about it, but just one of the best cards in the set, if not, again, the best card, 4.25, and I will not go back. I will not go back on that. Ulamog the Defiler is 10 mana for a 7/7 legendary Eldrazi. When you cast this spell, target opponent exiles half of their library rounded up. This also has ward, sack 2 permanents. Ulamog the Defiler enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. Ulamog has Annihilator X, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So the idea is that you cast this spell, exile half their library, which is gross. But because you exiled half their library, it's going to get what's the greatest mana value? Well, 5, something like that. It's going to get 4 or 5 +1/+1 counters. And then that means it's going to have Annihilator 4, Annihilator 5. So if it ever attacks, it's going to be an 11/11 Annihilator 4. And if the opponent wants to get rid of it, they have to sacrifice 2 permanents. So that's kind of like Annihilator 2 just to ward, Gross ward. Note, too, that just like the other ones, you just reanimate this. You can just reanimate this card. And it's kind of okay. It's a 7/7 ward, sack 2 permanents in and of itself. And if you can find a way to get counters on it, then it'll have an Annihilator. So that's also absolutely stupid. It's so stupid. I don't think this is the strongest Ulamog ever, but I do think this is a very, very strong card. The ward is incredibly strong. Half their library exiled isn't a big deal. It really isn't that big of a deal, but the fact that this isn't a 7/7, if you can actually cast this out of your hand, this is going to be a 12/12, a lot of the time. You know what I mean? That's pretty good. So if you ever attack with this, you threaten to just murder your opponent right then and there, So love it, love it, love it, but can't say it's as strong as some of the other ones. I think it's close to the level of Kozilek, not quite on the level of Emmy, even close. So I kind of have to give it what do we give Kaz? A 3.25? I think this is probably in the same neighborhood, give or take. Unfathomable Truths is 5 mana, 4 and a blue for an insto with Deep Void. Draw 3 cards, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sack, blah, blah, blah. Get the mana. So draw 3 and get a spawn token for 5's bad. It is instant speed, though. This is instant speed. So instant speed, draw 3 and get ramp on a body? I don't know. 1.75. It's better than I think. Unstable Amulet is 2 mana, 1 on a red for an artifact. When it ETBs, you get 2 energy. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Amulet deals 1 damage to each opponent. Tap, pay 2 energy, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until you exile another card with Unstable Amulet. So there may be weird infinites with this. Just right off the top of my head, there may be weird infinites with this, but just 1 damage to anybody whenever you, play a spell the red way. I always say you draw a card the red way by exiling it and you can play it that turn or whatever. So whenever you do that, dealing a damage is really good. I just feel like there's combo setups or just everyone take 5 in the same turn with that kind of setup. You know what I mean? But if nothing else, 2 mana for an artifact that gives you energy and almost always at least draws 1 card. It can draw the card the turn it comes into play, and then as long as you have Unstable, you can still play the card next turn. This is all really good. That's all so good. I think this is like halfway playable, you know? So I'm going to give it a 2.75. Urza's Cave. A lot of people have been talking about this. I saw people joking this is the best land in the set. Like better than Ugin's Labyrinth, and like, come on, man. But still, Urza's Cave. By the way, this is a land with the land type Urza's Cave, which means it's a cave, but also means it's an Urza's land, which is super cute to me. You can tap it for a colorless, and it comes into play untapped. Or you can pay 3, tap it, and sack it to search your library for any land card, put it on the battlefield tap, shuffle up. Good. Solid magic card, dude. Really, really solid magic card. This search for like an Urza Saga? Is that a land? It might be. Anyway, this searches for a Gaia's Cradle, I guess, or a Nykthos and Commander, and that's fun too. So, you know, search for your Dark Depths, I guess, if you want to do something really kooky. So, no matter what goofy thing you're doing, search for my Thespian Stage, and that can copy something else. Like, I don't know, it's just a cool land, dude. Like, it is very, very cool. It costs effectively 4 mana to do the thing, but you also kind of don't care. Just altogether a good package here that I'm going to give a 3, which seems really high, but I just think there's so much you can do with it. Other insignificance is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an aura with flash that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and has base power and toughness 1/1. That's just Eaten by Piranhas. Is it better than Eaten by Piranhas? Yes, because you can pay 2 and a colorless to exile the enchanted creature. Flash, this, like Eaten by Piranhas, is actually like an underrated card, but it's not modern play. It's not standard playable for the most part, so it's definitely not modern playable. I'll just give the card a 1.75, keep it pushing. It's halfway decent removal. Vexing Bauble, baby. This is a 1 mana artifact. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. You can also pay 1, tap it, and sack it to draw a card. Very hard to evaluate in terms of giving it a score, because it does one thing. It only works against certain decks, but those decks are everywhere in Vintage and Modern. So it's actually a very good magic. Like, this is, in some ways, you could make the argument, this is the single most relevant card in the entire set. And for that reason, I'm just going to give it a solid 3. Like, it's mostly a sideboard card, so there's that, kind of keeping it back. But even though it's one of the best cards in the set, almost hands down, I really can't go higher than a 3 on this. Very situational. Void Pouncer is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 3/1 Eldrazi with Devoid and Kicker, 2 and a colorless. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters and a trample counter on it, and with haste. So, what is that? 5 total mana for a 5/3 trample haste? No, that's not great. This is a 1.25. Volatile Stormdrake is interesting, man. This is deceptively good. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 3/2 Drake with flying and hexproof from activated and triggered abilities. When it enters the battlefield, exchange control of Volatile Stormdrake and a creature an opponent controls. If you do, you get 4 energy and then sack that creature unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So, a lot of ways to play this. This can just get you 4 energy. You just have 4 energy and sack the guy. Because it's just removal, right? Like, you're not sacrificing, you're not like giving the creature back to your opponent. You're just removing the creature. It's actually really neat. This is a sneaky form of re-blueval that also just gives you 4 energy for 2 mana. That's awesome. That's a great way to play the card. Or it's just a 2 mana 3/2 flying hexproof. Because you don't like, I don't know, like that's not bad if you can somehow get it on the table on your side. If your opponent doesn't have any creatures, right, then it's just a 2 mana 3/2 flyer with hexproof from stuff. That's good. That's good right there. But also you can just use it to get your opponent's best creature. And a lot of the best creatures in Modern are 1, 2, 3 mana creatures, right? So it does suck you're giving your opponent a 3-power flyer, right? But like, you're getting the creature they built their deck around. So it could be really good for you. Overall, I just really like this guy. I'm actually going to give him a 3.25. Even though I didn't like talk about him at all during previous season, I actually think that he's really, really good. And 3.25 is a bit high, but that's where I want to be. Voltstorm Angel is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for a 4/4 angel with flying, because angels have flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, choose one. Either Voltstorm Angel gains flying and lifelink till end of turn, or other creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. This is a draft card, 1.25. Warp Tusker is 7 mana, 6/8 Eldrazi Boar Beast with Reach. When you cast or cycle it, you get a spawn token, and it cycles for 3 mana. It's really neat. Draw a card, get a spawn token for 3 mana at instant speed. When you think about that, you know, a body and ramp at instant speed is something you don't see every day. And a drawn card. I actually think there's something kind of there here, But maybe there's not enough there for it to see play there in Pauper or whatever. I'm still going to give it a 2.5. I don't think this card's terrible. Warren Soul Trader Baby is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard. Really important 2 of those creature types, really. You could argue all of them are. Pay a life, sack another creature, create a treasure token. So not freely repeatable forever sack outlet, but more or less free in terms of mana sack outlet that actually generates mana. It's really good with a lot of stuff because you can sack a guy and then sack the token, and that will proc any sack things that you have triggering on your side of the table. This looks like an old Magic card, especially in the retro frame. This just looks like it was printed in 1997. And that's helped by the fact that Pete Venters did the artwork. And it looks like Pete Venters' 1998 artwork or whatever. Just a really, really gorgeous Magic card, but a great one too. There are a number of awesome Aristocrats cards in the set. We've already covered some. I think that Marionette Apprentice is the best, but if there's a runner-up, it's definitely this one, and yet another repeatable sack outlet. And this one makes ramp for us. Yeah. This is probably the best 3-mana free sack outlet available to Commander Aristocrats players. So, 3 or more. 3 or more. And that's not just because Commander. This could see Modern play. Like, if you need a 3-mana sack outlet in Modern, this is probably your absolute best choice. Very likely. But Wastegate Battle Mage is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi wizard with kicker green and or 1 and a blue. If you cast this spell, if it was kicked with its green kicker cost, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. When you cast this spell, if it was kicked with its 1 and a blue kicker cost, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. This is really, really cool, right? 4 mana for a kind of mana war thing, or 3 mana for like an Utabi orangutan that can also target enchantments, you know. It's really good, like a Lauren of the Third Path for 3 mana, you know. Just altogether, this is sweet. I actually want to give this like a 2.75, and I'm not going to. I'm going to give it a 2.25 because it will almost certainly never see Modern play. But for a total of 3, what is it? A total of 5 mana, you can blow up that guy and bounce that guy and get a 2/2. Like all of together, it's a pretty good package. Pretty good package. Waterlogged Teachings is 4 mana, 3 and a blue-black hybrid for an instant. Search your library for an instant card or a card with flash. Reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle up. This is a tap Dimir land on the other side of it. Pretty good. I don't know if it's Modern playable, but 2.75 altogether. It's a Commander Tutor, which I think will take it a long way in terms of playability. In Commander, this is a Tutor that's also a land. That's a dual land, which is just even more important. So he's going to see a lot of play there. Wheel of Potential is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a sorcery. You get 3 energy, and then you may pay X energy. Each player may exile their hand and draw X cards. If X is 7 or more, you may play land cards you own in exile this way until the end of your next turn. All the cards you put aside from your hand, you can play if X is 7 or more. Kind of a Wheel of Fortune variant, and they're not being too shy about it. It's called Wheel of a Thing and all that. And they give it a retro frame treatment. So like, huh? Why, by the way, I don't like this is a weird rant here that's taking up time, but I don't love the retro frame red color they chose. If you go back to like, you know, revised, unlimited, alpha, beta, the red they chose for that frame is very saturated red, close to pink. It's almost a pink, like especially on revised cards, because, you know, the color is a little faded. It's effectively pink. And I actually think that looks much, much better than whatever red this is they've chosen. But either way, it's neither here or there. The card itself is just okay. It's just all right. To actually turn it into Wheel of Fortune, you have to have kind of a lot of energy. Yeah, it's like a magenta. You know what I mean? Is this good? This is good, right? No, I don't think it's just kind of fine. I think this is kind of like a 2.5. But I'm willing to be wrong on it. I just don't think it's that good. White Orchid Phantom is up next. 2 white mana for a 2/2 Spirit Knight with flying and first strike. When an ETB is destroy up to 1 target non-basic land, its controller may search your library for a basic, put it on the field, tap, shuffle up. So, good Magic card. Really good Magic card. Kind of a Knight of the White Orchid callback, obviously, but it's fantastic, dude. 2 mana, 2/2 flying first strike is decent stats. Spirit is a relevant creature type. Knight can be a relevant creature type, but it's often not. Either way, like a Field of Ruin activation when it ETBs is always going to be good. Always going to be good. You can also, by the way, destroy, you know, one of your own non-basic lands if you want to do that, but you don't have to. There might be reasons why you might want to do that. Yeah, works. That's a good one. Works with your own indestructible lands. Target an indestructible land and go ramp yourself. That's a application I didn't think of. So Really neat. I'm actually going to give this card just a solid 3. I think this is right at the baseline of 3. It's like a perfect example of a 3, you know what I mean? Like worthy of likely modern play, but not in everything. Bit of a role player, sort of niche. May not even see the play, but could. So 3 all day. White of the Reliquary. A really cute name here. White of the Reliquary is black and a green for a 2/2 zombie knight with vigilance that gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your yard. You can tap it and sack a creature to search your library for a land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. That's sexy, right? That's pretty good. I mean, you are coming down on real board presence in the form of a creature to go get your land, but you're ramping. You're getting any land you want to in your whole deck. Your Knight of the Reliquary is getting bigger when you use its own ability, right? It's sacking creatures. So it becomes a 3/3/4/4/5/5 vigilance for just 2 mana. Just all together. Really cool design here. I'm not sure that like a Knight of the Reliquary take is playable in 2024. And I do think it is better than Knight of the Reliquary. For the most part, for different reasons. You know, it's not quite the same card, but still good enough, I think, that it's probably altogether better. Also, some decks want to sacrifice creatures and stuff. So, you know, especially in these colors, more than original Knight. Some decks want to sacrifice creatures. So I do think this is a good Magic card, but I really don't want to give it more than like a 2.75. But it could go all the way up to a 3 1/4. It's kind of hard to tell with this one, but solid. If anything, solid Magic card, undeniably. Wing It is 2 mana, 1 on a white for an instant. Creature gets +2/+2 till end of turn. Put a flying counter on it. Scry 1. You know, limited combat trick, although an awful big, it's a pretty good limited combat trick, but that's all it really is. 1.25. Winter Moon is not the final card in the set. I thought that it was. 2 mana for an artifact. Players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap steps. This is in the top 5 cards in the set, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to give this a 4 and keep it pushing. I really want to give it like a 3.5, but any deck can play it. It will be a deck that, or card that decks in Modern have to find a way around. It will sort of define the format in some ways. Even if not everyone is playing it, it will warp the format around the existence of this card. So I gotta say, man, between this and like Flood Moon, I think the chatter ended up calling it. That was a great name. Between this and that card, there are really annoying cards in this set, man. But I gotta give it a 4. I think that it's right there. Witch Enchanter is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/2 human warlock. When it ETBs, destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Solid, man. Altogether solid. I'll give it a 2.5. Wither and Bloom is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. A creature gets nameless inverted, -3/-3 till end of turn. But also, you can pay 1 and a black and exile this card from your yard to put a counter on a creature you control as a sorcery. I actually think this is pretty good. I don't know if it's modern playable, but I think it's on the cusp of modern, or of Pauper playability. So I'll give it a 2.25. I think it's a decent removal spell. Wrath of the Skies is X and 2 white for a sorcery that everybody's talking about. You get X energy, and then you may pay any amount of energy. Destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with mana value less than or equal to the amount of energy paid this way. So destroys every token for just 2 mana and nothing else. Pretty good. But, you know, there's plenty of cards, like I said, we looked at the thing that gives you 2 energy on turn 1, and you draw a card at instant speed. And then you can just untap and play this on turn 2 and blank everything that's happened so far that game. Guaranteed, which I think is really, really good. But obviously later on in the game, this scales really well. When you just have all the energy, you don't know what to do with it. Also, you know, if you've got a relatively expensive permanent out, then you could always, you know, like the most expensive permanent, you could always just pay enough energy to leave your guy on the table. So that's really cute. This reminds me of like a temporary lockdown or something like that. But I think in a lot of ways, it's even better. Just a beast of a card. And I think a lot of people who are saying like, I think the energy deck will be built this way. I think it's a lot of that is because of this card. This card is one of the big reasons the energy deck will probably be built the way it looks like it's going to be built. I'm going to give this card a 3.25. And I know that's like nuts because it's just a sweeper, but I think that it is a really, really, really consequential sweeper that almost says destroy each non-land permanent on it, scales for the entire game, and starts doing work very early. So this is a format warping-ish kind of card that I think will do a lot in this upcoming environment. Writhing Chrysalis is 4 mana. I love the art on this thing, man. Good job. Good job, Domenko. This is 2, a green, and a red for a 2/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. When you cast this spell, you get 2 spawn tokens, and it also has reach. Whenever you sacrifice another Eldrazi, put a +1/+1 counter on Chrysalis. So when you get your mana, this becomes a 4/5. from your spawn tokens. It's just all right. 4 mana for 2 spawn tokens is kind of like we're talking a little bit, but it's not great. 1.5. Wumpus Aberration is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 6/6 Eldrazi beast with Devoid. When you cast this spell, if colorless wasn't spent to cast it, target opponent may put a creature card from their hand onto the battlefield. You can trample. So that, you know, it's a Wumpus. It's got a Wumpus ability that helps your opponent if you did. But in this case, the Wumpus ability, the Wumpus condition is very easy to fulfill. Just spend colorless mana and you get a 4 mana 6/6 trample. That said, a 4 mana 6/6 trample isn't good enough by itself to do anything in Modern, sadly enough. It's just a fun like callback to Wumpuses and Ferox and stuff like that. So I'll just give it a 1.5 and keep pushing. Wormcoil Lava is the final card in the set. Oh my goodness, 5 mana for a callback. 3 and 2 black for a 3/3 Phyrexian Worm. It's an artifact creature with Death Touch and Lifelink. When the Wormcoil Larva dies, create a 1/2 black Phyrexian Worm artifact creature token with Death Touch, and a 2/1 black artifact worm blah 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 with Lifelink. So you see how the one with the higher power gets Lifelink, and the one with the lower power gets Death Touch. Genius design move on that one. This is fun, but nothing but fun. Playable card, I think, in Limited, where it's actually kind of a beast because you get a Death Touch Lifelink guy. That's just going to be good in Limited, even if it dies on blocks. But you also get like a Death Touch guy after it dies. So like 2 Death Touch guys, a bunch of Lifelink, 3 total bodies on a 5-drop. Like very playable Limited card, but 2 at the absolute most of 2. We have done it. Stop the stopwatch. I have no idea what our time was. We're at 4 hours and 6 minutes on the stream right now, just past midnight my time. Which means that this took about 3.5 hours. It took about 3 hours and 35 minutes or something like that. Which is not our personal best, but it's also nowhere near our worst. So I guess that's fine. Long set with a lot of really complicated wordy cards. And now my voice is just about shot. We did it. Idaho CRX, thank you for your gifted sub. Token Black Guy 420. That's okay. Good name, I guess. We got What Doth Life in here following. I feel like What Doth Life is followed like 5 times. Just keep on following. Like he said something that made me mad. He's a good guy. You know. Has Matthew, thanks for your follow. Nerdatronic, thanks for your follow. Chill Gaming Incorporated, 34 months. And I think that I am caught up with all of the love you guys shown tonight. Thank you very, very much. You guys are always incredible. The wind beneath my wings, the people carrying me across the finish line. I have 1 mile left to go in the marathon. You pick my lifeless body up and pull it across the tape. And I really appreciate that for you, or for me, guys. Thanks for being here the whole time. Whether you're here on Twitch live or you're watching on YouTube, which is where I imagine the majority you're going to watch. But you could be here on Twitch, twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. Imagine if I had said your name during this or looked at you and been like, oh yeah, a guy in chat said the thing. And it was the thing you had said. And I said your name and you'd be enshrined in a YouTube video for all history. Come follow on Twitch. We have a great time over here, me and the squad. So anyway, that's all I've got for the YouTube portion of the video. Just like the video on your way out. Make sure you sub to the sandwich if you haven't done it yet. I put my body and my voice box, my larynx on the line for you. So a sub would really help out around here. Also, you know, YouTube really likes when you hit that like button. Helps with the algorithm, do that. You can check out the Patreon if $1 a month is worth all of this to you. You know, $1 a month, all I really ask. And you get to vote on what decks and stuff we do. Links to Patreon in the description. But for now, I more or less have to stop talking. Or I might... Something is going to pop in my throat, and then I won't be able to do this job no matter what my Patreon looks like. Let's go ahead and not break my voice box, which is a thing you can do. I just found out the other day you can break your voice box. Ow! But anyway, I'm done for this one. YouTube people, Twitch people, stick around for another like 2 minutes. And we'll burn this sucker down together, everybody. Again, you got to follow me on Twitch. But either way, love you, YouTube peeps, and I will catch you cats later. I am Deb from the place. Thank you for watching this entire thing. Thank you so much, Wizards, for watching. I'll catch you cats later. Bye, everybody. Spread love and be kind.